The alarms shattered the silence of the research station, their shrill wail echoing through the sterile corridors. Dr. Elena Voss froze mid-step, her coffee cup slipping from her fingers. The sound was unmistakable, a containment alert. Her eyes darted to the glowing monitor on her desk, where a single line of text pulsed ominously. Dark matter anomaly detected. Containment breach imminent. Impossible, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the cacophony. The probe's transmission wasn't supposed to arrive for another week. Yet there it was, scrolling across the screen in stark, unrelenting detail. Her fingers flew over the keyboard, pulling up the raw data. Numbers and graphs cascaded before her, but one figure stood out. A spike in gravitational interference, unlike anything recorded before. The station trembled faintly, as if the universe itself were holding its breath. Alina's mind raced. Dark matter wasn't supposed to behave like this. It was invisible, untouchable, a shadow in the fabric of space. But this was something else entirely. A faint hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. It wasn't the alarms this time. It was coming from the probe's relay system. The transmission was still live. Her heart pounded as she leaned closer to the monitor. The data stream shifted, and a new message flickered into view. Warning, containment protocols failing. Entity escape likely. Entity, Alina muttered, her brow furrowing. The word sent a chill down her spine. Dark matter wasn't an entity. It was a force, a mystery, not something that could escape. The station lights flickered, and for a moment, the air seemed to thicken, pressing against her skin like an invisible weight. She glanced at the observation window, where the inky void of space stretched endlessly. A faint ripple passed through the stars, almost imperceptible, as if something vast and unseen were stirring. Alina's fingers hovered over the keyboard. She had to warn someone, but the words caught in her throat. This wasn't just a scientific anomaly. It was a revelation. And as the hum grew louder, she realized with a sinking certainty that it wasn't just the probe transmitting. Something out there was listening. The screen flickered again, and the final message appeared. Do not respond. Do not investigate. Humanity is not ready. And then the lights went out. The emergency lights flickered to life, casting an eerie red glow across the lab. Alina's breath came in short, sharp bursts as she fumbled for her communicator. All personnel, this is Dr. Voss. Report to the central lab immediately. Priority 1. Her voice wavered slightly, but there was no time for hesitation. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than any one of them. Within minutes, the lab filled with the hurried footsteps of her team. Marcus Kane, the station's rogue engineer, was the first to arrive, his usual smirk replaced by a look of grim determination. Containment breach, he asked, his eyes darting to the flickering monitors. Alina nodded, her hands already pulling up the probe's data on the central display. Dr. Priya Rao, the station's xenolinguist, entered next, her sharp features illuminated by the glow of the screens. What are we looking at? She asked, her voice calm but tinged with urgency. Alina gestured to the pulsating graph on the monitor. This, she said, is dark matter behaving in ways it shouldn't. It's not just inert or passive, it's reacting. The team gathered around the display, their faces illuminated by the shifting patterns of light. The data streamed in real time, showing a series of rhythmic pulses that defied any known astrophysical phenomenon. Marcus leaned in, his fingers flying over a secondary console. This isn't random, he muttered. It's almost like a signal. Priya's eyes narrowed as she studied the patterns. If it's a signal, it's unlike anything we've seen before. The modulation is too precise to be natural. She paused, her voice dropping. Do you think it's intentional? Alina hesitated. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. Dark matter was supposed to be a cosmic mystery, not something that could communicate. Yet the evidence was undeniable. If it is, she said slowly, we're dealing with something far beyond our understanding. Marcus pulled up a three-dimensional rendering of the probe's data, revealing a swirling, pulsating mass at the heart of the anomaly. It shimmered like a living thing, its edges shifting and undulating in ways that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Look at this, he said, pointing to a series of concentric ripples emanating from the core. These aren't gravitational waves, they're something else, something conscious. The word hung in the air, heavy with implication. Priya broke the silence. If this is an intelligence, we need to approach it carefully. We don't know what it wants or if it even understands us. Alina nodded, her mind racing. We need to analyze every piece of data we have. Marcus, focus on the energy patterns. Priya, see if you can decode any potential linguistic structures. And someone get me a direct link to Earth Command. This can't wait. As the team sprang into action, Alina couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of something monumental. The probe's warning echoed in her mind. Humanity is not ready, but ready or not, they had no choice. The dark matter anomaly wasn't just a scientific curiosity anymore, it was a doorway to the unknown. And whatever lay beyond, it was already knocking. The hum in the air grew louder, almost musical, as the entity on the screen pulsed in time with the rhythm. It was as if it knew they were watching, and perhaps, Alina thought, it did. The lab was alive with tension, the air thick with unspoken fears and the weight of what lay ahead. The team stood around the central console, the pulsating anomaly on the screen, casting an otherworldly glow over their faces. Marcus was the first to break the silence, his voice low and urgent. This isn't just science anymore, he said, his eyes locked on the shimmering mass. It's a Pandora's box. Once we open it, there's no going back. Alina turned to him, her expression resolute. If we don't open it, we'll never know what's out there, and that's a risk I'm not willing to take. Her voice was steady, but there was a flicker of doubt in her eyes, a rare crack in her usually unshakable confidence. Priya leaned forward, her fingers tracing the patterns on the screen. Marcus isn't wrong, she said carefully. We're dealing with something that defies every law of physics we know. If this is an intelligence, we have no way of predicting how it will react to us. It could be hostile, it could be indifferent, or it could be something we can't even comprehend. Marcus crossed his arms, his jaw tightening. Exactly, we're not just risking ourselves here. If this thing gets loose, if it decides Earth is worth investigating, we could be looking at an extinction-level event. Is that a chance we're willing to take? Elena hesitated, her gaze drifting back to the anomaly. The rhythmic pulses seemed almost hypnotic, as if the entity itself were listening, waiting for their next move. I understand the risks, she said finally, but we're scientists. Our job is to explore the unknown, to push the boundaries of what we think is possible. This could change everything. It could rewrite the rules of the universe, and if we walk away now, we might never get another shot. Priya nodded slowly, her analytical mind already weighing the possibilities. Elena's right. The opportunity here is unprecedented, but we need to proceed with extreme caution. We can't afford to make mistakes. Marcus threw up his hands in frustration. Caution, we're talking about poking a sleeping giant with a stick. There's no such thing as caution when you're dealing with something like this. He gestured to the screen, where the anomaly continued to pulse. its edges rippling like a living thing. This isn't just another experiment. This is a threat. Alina stepped closer, her voice softening. I know you're scared, Marcus. I am too, but think about what we could gain. If this is an intelligence, if it's trying to communicate, this could be the first contact humanity has ever made with something beyond our world. Don't you want to be part of that? Don't you want to know what's out there? For a moment, Marcus said nothing. His shoulders slumped, and he let out a long breath. Of course I do, he admitted. But that doesn't mean I'm not terrified, and you should be too. Alina reached out, placing a hand on his arm. We'll be careful, I promise, but we can't let fear stop us from moving forward. The room fell silent again, the weight of their decision pressing down on them like the gravity of a collapsing star. Finally, Priya broke the tension. So, what's the plan? Alina straightened, her resolve hardening. We launch a mission to the Anomaly's origin point. We gather as much data as we can, but we maintain a safe distance. No direct contact, not yet. We observe, we analyze, and we proceed one step at a time. Marcus nodded reluctantly, his expression still grim. And if it doesn't like us poking around? Alina met his gaze, her voice steady. Then we'll deal with that when it happens. But we have to try. The alternative is living in ignorance, and that's a risk I'm not willing to take. As the team began to prepare for the mission, the anomaly on the screen seemed to pulse faster, as if aware of their plans. The hum in the air grew louder, a haunting melody that sent shivers down their spines. Whatever waited for them in the depths of space, one thing was certain: they were stepping into the unknown, and there was no turning back. The starship Ether glided silently through the void, its sleek hull reflecting the faint light of distant stars. Inside, the crew moved with purpose, their movements precise but tinged with unease. They had been traveling for weeks, following the coordinates of the dark matter anomaly, and now they were closing in. The tension was palpable, a quiet hum of anticipation that matched the low thrum of the ship's engines. Alina stood at the command console, her eyes fixed on the forward viewport. The anomaly loomed ahead, a swirling mass of darkness that seemed to drink in the light around it. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure, a cosmic enigma that defied explanation. Prepare for approach, she ordered, her voice calm but firm. The crew responded instantly, their training overriding their fear. But as the Ether drew closer, something strange began to happen. The ship's sensors flickered, their readings erratic and inconsistent. Marcus, monitoring the data stream, frowned. Something's wrong, he said, his voice tight with concern. The anomaly is emitting some kind of interference. It's like nothing I've ever seen. Before anyone could respond, the ship lurched violently, throwing the crew off balance. The lights dimmed, and the air seemed to thicken, pressing in on them like a physical force. Alina grabbed the edge of the console to steady herself, her heart pounding. Report, she barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. Priya's voice came over the calm, sharp and urgent. We're experiencing a spatial distortion. It's altering the fabric of space-time around us. I don't know how long we can maintain stability. The words sent a chill through Alina. Spatial distortions were rare and unpredictable, often accompanied by bizarre and dangerous effects. Before she could issue further orders, the ship shuddered again, and the world around her seemed to blur. Colors bled together, and the air grew heavy, almost syrupy. She blinked, trying to clear her vision, but the sensation only intensified. And then it happened. Alina's mind was flooded with images, fragments of memories that didn't belong to her. She saw herself standing on the bridge of the Ether, but the ship was in ruins, its hull cracked and scorched. She saw Marcus lying motionless on the floor, his face pale and lifeless. She saw Priya screaming, her hands clutching at her head, as if trying to block out some unimaginable horror. The images came in rapid succession, disjointed and chaotic, like pieces of a puzzle that didn't fit together. She staggered back, her breath coming in ragged gasps. What is this?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Around her, the crew was experiencing the same phenomenon. Marcus was crouched on the floor, his hands pressed to his temples, while Priya stood frozen, her eyes wide with terror. "It's the distortion," Priya said, her voice barely audible. "It's warping time. We're seeing fragments of the future, or maybe alternate realities. I don't know, but it's not real. It can't be." Elena forced herself to focus, pushing the visions aside. "We need to stabilize the ship," she said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "Marcus, reroute power to the inertial dampeners. Priya, see if you can isolate the source of the distortion. We can't let this thing tear us apart." As the crew scrambled to regain control, the distortion intensified. The air crackled with energy, and the ship groaned under the strain. Alina's mind raced, trying to make sense of what they were experiencing. Were the visions warnings, glimpses of what could happen if they failed, or were they merely illusions, tricks of a mind pushed to its limits? One thing was certain: the anomaly was no longer just a scientific curiosity. It was alive, sentient, and it was testing them. And if they didn't find a way to regain control, the Ether and its crew would be lost, not just in space, but in time itself. The Ether edged closer to the anomaly, its engines humming softly against the oppressive silence of space. The swirling void loomed ahead, a chaotic dance of darkness and faint, shimmering light that seemed to defy all known laws of physics. It was as if the universe had torn a hole in itself, revealing something ancient and incomprehensible. The crew watched in awe, their faces illuminated by the eerie glow of their instruments. "Signal detected," Priya announced, her voice cutting through the tension. "It's faint, but it's there," repeating on a loop. She glanced at Alina, her expression a mix of curiosity and unease. "It's a message." Alina's heart quickened. "Play it," she ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The comm system crackled to life, and a voice, deep, resonant, and utterly alien, filled the bridge. The words were clear, yet their meaning sent a chill through the room. "Do not unlock the truth," the message repeated, each iteration more haunting than the last. Marcus exhaled sharply, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. "Well, that's not ominous at all," he muttered, though his sarcasm couldn't mask the tension in his voice. "What the hell is it trying to tell us?" Elena stared at the anomaly, her mind racing. The words echoed in her thoughts, a warning that felt both personal and universal. "It's not just a signal," she said slowly. "It's a plea, or maybe a threat. Either way, it's telling us to stop." Priya adjusted the sensors, her fingers moving swiftly over the controls. "The signal's origin is deep within the anomaly. Whatever's sending it, it's not just floating out there. It's part of this thing." Marcus shook his head, his skepticism warring with the unease etched on his face. "Yeah, and that's exactly why we should turn around. If something out there is telling us to back off, maybe we should listen." Alina turned to him, her gaze intense. "And what if we're meant to hear this? What if this is the key to understanding what dark matter really is? We can't just walk away because we're scared." Priya glanced between them, her analytical mind already dissecting the implications. "Alina's right. This could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for. But we need to be careful. If the anomaly is sentient, Or if something inside it is, we're dealing with a level of intelligence we can't predict. Marcus threw up his hands in frustration. Careful, we're flying straight into a cosmic warning sign. This isn't careful, it's reckless. Alina stepped closer to the viewport, her reflection barely visible against the swirling darkness. Maybe it is reckless, she admitted, but this isn't just about us. If there's a truth out there, something hidden, something dangerous, we have to face it. Humanity deserves to know. The crew fell silent, the weight of her words settling over them like a heavy blanket. The signal continued to play in the background, a constant reminder of the stakes. Finally, Priya spoke. So, what's the plan? Alina straightened, her resolve hardening. We proceed, but we do it smart. Marcus, I need you to reinforce the ship's shields. Priya, keep analyzing that signal, see if you can find patterns or hidden layers. And everyone, stay vigilant. We don't know what we're dealing with, but we're not backing down. As the crew moved to their stations, the anomaly seemed to pulse in response, its swirling mass shifting and twisting as if aware of their presence. The signal grew louder, more insistent, but Alina didn't flinch. She had spent her entire career chasing the unknown, and she wasn't about to let fear stop her now. The ether pressed forward, its engines steady against the pull of the void. The signal continued to echo through the ship, a haunting refrain that no one could ignore. Do not unlock the truth, but Alina had already made her choice. For better or worse, they were going in. The probe launched from the ether with a soft hiss, its sleek form gliding silently into the swirling darkness of the anomaly. The team watched in tense silence as it disappeared into the void, the feed from its cameras flickering to life on the bridge's main display. At first, there was nothing but static, a chaotic blur of light and shadow that made it impossible to discern any details. But then, as the probe adjusted its sensors, the image stabilized, revealing something that left the crew speechless. Embedded within the dark matter, like a jewel trapped in tar, was a structure. It was massive, its surface smooth and metallic, yet it seemed to ripple and shift as if it were alive. The architecture was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered, angular and geometric, yet fluid and organic. It was both ancient and timeless, a relic of a civilization that had long since vanished, yet somehow still active, still waiting. Priya leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she studied the images. Look at the surface, she said, pointing to the intricate patterns etched into the structure. Those aren't random markings, they're symbols, some kind of language. Alina's breath caught in her throat. Can you translate them? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Priya nodded, her fingers already flying over the console as she fed the symbols into the ship's translation matrix. The process was slow, painstaking, but the symbols began to resolve into something recognizable. Words emerged, fragmented at first, but slowly forming a coherent message. Priya's voice was steady as she read them aloud. The gate must remain sealed. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Marcus broke the silence first, his voice laced with disbelief. A gate to what, and why does it need to stay sealed? Alina stared at the structure on the screen, her mind racing. The anomaly wasn't just a phenomenon, it was a barrier, a lock guarding something beyond comprehension. And the structure, it wasn't just a relic, it was a warning, a message left by a civilization that had faced whatever lay beyond and deemed it too dangerous to unleash. Priya's voice interrupted her thoughts. There's more, she said, her tone grim. The symbols repeat the same phrase, but there's an addendum, it says. The cost of opening is eternal. Marcus let out a low whistle. Well, that's comforting. Eternal cost, What does that even mean? Alina's gaze remained fixed on the structure. It means they knew something we don't. Something so dangerous, so catastrophic, that they went to extraordinary lengths to keep it contained. And now, we've found it. The crew fell silent, the weight of the discovery pressing down on them. The probe continued to transmit data, revealing more of the structure's surface. The symbols were everywhere, etched into every inch of the metallic surface, as if the creators had been desperate to ensure their warning would be seen, would be understood. Priya's voice broke the silence again. "There's something else," she said, her tone suddenly urgent. "The symbols, they're not just a warning, they're instructions. A sequence, a code, for opening the gate." Alina's eyes widened. What? Why would they leave that kind of information if they didn't want anyone to open it? Priya shook her head, her brow furrowed in confusion. "I don't know. Maybe it's a test. A way to see if anyone who finds it is wise enough to heed the warning. Or maybe," she hesitated, her voice dropping, "maybe they knew someone would try to open it eventually, and they wanted to make sure it was done." "Correctly," Marcus groaned, running a hand through his hair. "Great. So now we've got a cosmic puzzle box that might end the world if we mess with it. And we've got the instructions to open it. What could possibly go wrong?" Alina's mind raced as she processed the implications. The structure, the symbols, the warning, it all pointed to something far beyond their understanding. But as much as the warning terrified her, the scientist in her couldn't ignore the opportunity. This was a chance to uncover a truth that had been hidden for eons, a secret that could redefine humanity's place in the universe. She turned to the crew, her voice firm. "We need to decide what to do next. We can't ignore this. It's too important, but we also can't afford to make a mistake. One wrong move, and we could unleash something we can't control." Priya nodded, her expression thoughtful. "We need more data. If we can decipher the rest of the symbols, we might be able to understand what's at stake. But we have to be careful. This isn't just science anymore. It's survival." Marcus crossed his arms, his skepticism still evident. Survival, more like suicide. "But hey, if we're going down, might as well go down in style." Alina ignored his sarcasm, her focus already shifting to the next steps. The probe continued to transmit images, revealing more of the structure's intricate design. The symbols seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive, as if watching. And as the team prepared to delve deeper, one question loomed over them like a shadow. Were they unlocking the secrets of the universe, or sealing their own doom? The Aether's sensors began to blare, their alarms slicing through the tense silence of the bridge. Marcus stared at the readings, his face pale as he processed the data. "Alina," he said, his voice tight with urgency, "you need to see this." He gestured to the display, where a graph showed the anomaly expanding at an alarming rate. The swirling mass of dark matter was no longer contained. It was spreading, its edges reaching out like tendrils into the surrounding space. Alina leaned over the console, her eyes narrowing as she studied the numbers. "It's growing exponentially," she murmured, her voice tinged with a mix of awe and dread. "If this continues, it could engulf entire star systems within weeks." Marcus turned to her, his frustration boiling over. "This isn't just a curiosity anymore, Alina. It's a threat. We're sitting here debating whether to open some ancient gate, while this thing is literally eating the universe. We need to abort the mission and get out of here before it's too late." Alina met his gaze, her expression unyielding. "And do what, Marcus? Run back to Earth and pretend we didn't see this?" The anomaly isn't just a danger. It's a mystery, that structure inside it. It's the key to understanding what dark matter really is. If we walk away now, we might never get another chance. Marcus slammed his hand on the console, the sharp sound echoing through the bridge. Chance. This isn't about chances or science, or whatever lofty ideals you're chasing. This is about survival. That thing out there is growing, and if we don't stop it, there won't be an Earth to go back to. Do you understand that? Priya stepped forward, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to Marcus's intensity. Alina, he's not wrong. The Anomalies expansion is accelerating. If we don't do something soon, it could destabilize entire regions of space. But Marcus, shutting down the mission isn't the answer. If the structure inside holds any clues about how to control or contain the anomaly, we need to find them. Now. Alina nodded, her mind racing. Priya's right. We're running out of time, but that doesn't mean we give up. If the civilization that built that structure knew how to contain the anomaly, the answers might be in those symbols. We need to decode the rest of the message fast. Marcus threw up his hands in exasperation. You're both missing the point. This isn't just about decoding symbols or unlocking gates. This is about consequences. What if opening that gate makes things worse? What if it's the trigger for the anomaly to consume everything? Have you even considered that? Elena's voice softened, but her resolve didn't waver. Of course I've considered it, but we don't have the luxury of playing it safe anymore. The anomaly is already growing. If we don't act, the consequences will be catastrophic. This isn't just about us. It's about every star system, every planet, every life out there. We have to try. The bridge fell silent, the weight of her words pressing down on them. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, his anger giving way to a reluctant understanding. Fine, he said at last, his voice heavy with resignation. But if this goes sideways, it's on you. Alina nodded, her expression grim. Understood. She turned back to the console, her fingers flying over the controls. Priya, focus on the symbols. We need to decode the rest of that message as quickly as possible. Marcus, keep monitoring the anomaly's growth. If it accelerates again, I need to know immediately. As the crew returned to their stations, the anomaly loomed larger on the view screen, its swirling darkness, a constant reminder of the stakes. The structure within it seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive, as if waiting, and as Alina stared into the void, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time, not just to unlock the truth, but to survive it. The Aetha hung in the balance, caught between the pull of discovery and the weight of responsibility, and somewhere in the depths of the anomaly, the gate waited, its secrets poised to change everything. The Aetha's docking mechanism locked into place with a resonant clang, the sound echoing through the ship as the team prepared to breach the alien structure. Alina stood at the head of the group, her heart pounding as she adjusted the settings on her environmental suit. The structure loomed before them, its metallic surface shimmering faintly as if alive. The symbols etched into its walls pulsed with a soft, eerie light, their patterns shifting subtly as if responding to the team's presence. Marcus checked his equipment one last time, his usual sarcasm replaced by a tense focus. You sure about this? He asked, his voice tight. Once we're in there, there's no turning back. Alina nodded, her eyes fixed on the structure. We don't have a choice. The anomaly is growing, and this is the only lead we've got. We need answers now. Priya stepped forward, her handheld scanner already active. The airlock's intact, she reported, her tone calm but urgent. No signs of active defenses, but we should proceed with caution. We don't know what's waiting for us. The airlock hissed open, revealing a dimly lit corridor that stretched into the heart of the structure. The walls were smooth, almost organic, their surfaces reflecting the faint glow of the symbols. The team moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing softly against the metallic floor. The air was thick, almost tangible, as if the structure itself were breathing. As they advanced, the corridor opened into a vast chamber, its ceiling arching high above them. The walls were lined with intricate panels, each covered in more of the pulsating symbols. But what caught their attention was the center of the room, where a massive holographic display flickered to life. Images began to materialize, forming a three-dimensional tapestry of light and motion. The hologram depicted a civilization, an advanced, thriving society that had mastered the use of dark matter. They built towering cities that shimmered with an otherworldly glow, their architecture blending seamlessly with the fabric of space itself. Ships moved effortlessly through the void, powered by the very essence of the anomaly. It was a utopia, a testament to what humanity could only dream of achieving. But the images shifted and the tone darkened. The civilization's mastery of dark matter became their undoing. The hologram showed their cities collapsing, their ships disintegrating as the anomaly they had harnessed began to consume them. The final image was a haunting depiction of their world being torn apart, swallowed by the very power they had sought to control. A message appeared in the center of the hologram, written in the same alien script they had seen on the structure's walls. Priya translated it aloud, her voice trembling slightly. "We were not meant to wield this power." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Marcus broke the silence first, his voice low and grim. "So, they tried to control dark matter, and it destroyed them. Is that what we're dealing with? A warning from a civilization that already made the same mistake we're about to?" Alina stared at the hologram, her mind racing. "It's more than that," she said slowly. "They're not just warning us, they're showing us what happens if we fail. This isn't just a story of their downfall. It's a blueprint for ours." Priya stepped closer to the hologram, her scanner analyzing the symbols. "There's more here," she said, her tone urgent. "The message repeats, but there's an addendum. It says, the gate must remain sealed. The cost of opening is eternal." Marcus groaned, running a hand through his hair. "Great, so we've got a cosmic Pandora's box, and we're standing here with the key. What's the plan, Alina? Do we walk away, or do we risk unleashing whatever's on the other side?" Alina hesitated, her gaze fixed on the hologram. The images of the civilization's destruction played on a loop, a grim reminder of the stakes. But as she studied the symbols, something caught her eye: a pattern, a sequence that seemed out of place. "Wait," she said, her voice sharp with realization. "This isn't just a warning, it's a solution." Priya turned to her, her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Elena pointed to the symbols, her finger tracing the intricate patterns. "The sequence, it's not random, it's a set of instructions. They're telling us how to seal the anomaly, how to stop it from spreading, but it's not just about closing the gate. It's about understanding what's on the other side." The team fell silent, the weight of the discovery pressing down on them. The hologram continued to play, the images of destruction, a stark reminder of what was at stake. But as Alina studied the symbols, a sense of determination began to replace her fear. They had found the key, not just to unlocking the anomaly, but to saving everything it threatened to consume. The chamber seemed to hum faintly, as if the structure itself were aware of their presence. And as the team prepared to decipher the final sequence, one question lingered in the air. Were they about to uncover the truth, or unleash something far beyond their control? The chamber's symbols flared to life as Alina's fingers traced the final sequence, the air around her crackling with an electric hum. The holographic display shifted, its images dissolving into a swirling vortex of light and shadow. A low, resonant tone filled the space, vibrating through the walls and into the very bones of the team. Alina's breath caught as a pedestal rose from the floor, its surface smooth and reflective, save for a single indentation shaped like a hand. "This is it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The device they left behind. It's not just a warning, it's a test." Marcus stepped forward, his skepticism warring with the awe etched on his face. "A test? For what? To see if we're dumb enough to stick our hand in a glowing alien hole." Priya adjusted her scanner, her eyes narrowing as she studied the pedestal. "It's more than that," she said, her tone analytical but tinged with urgency. "The energy signature matches the anomaly. It's a direct link, a way to interface with it. But it's not just reading data, it's interactive." Elena hesitated for only a moment before placing her hand in the indentation. The response was immediate. A surge of energy coursed through her, not painful but overwhelming, as if the very fabric of her being were being unraveled and rewoven. The chamber dissolved around her, replaced by a kaleidoscope of images, alternate realities, each one a stark reminder of the fragility of existence. She saw Earth consumed by the anomaly, its cities crumbling into ash as the dark matter spread unchecked. She saw civilizations rising and falling in the blink of an eye, their triumphs and tragedies playing out in rapid succession. And then she saw herself standing in the chamber, her hand on the pedestal, but the outcome was different. In one vision, the anomaly was sealed, its growth halted, and humanity thrived. In another, the gate was opened, and the consequences were catastrophic. Entire star systems collapsing, galaxies torn apart by the unleashed power of the anomaly. The visions came faster, more chaotic, until they blurred into a single, overwhelming truth. The anomaly was not just a force of nature. It was a sentient entity, ancient and incomprehensible, its consciousness woven into the fabric of reality itself. And it was watching her. Alina gasped as the connection was severed, the chamber snapping back into focus around her. She staggered back, her hand trembling as she pulled it away from the pedestal. The team rushed to her side, their voices a blur of concern, but she barely heard them. The weight of what she had seen, what she now knew, was almost too much to bear. "It's alive," she said, her voice hoarse but steady. "The anomaly, it's not just a phenomenon, it's a consciousness, and it's been waiting for us." Marcus stared at her, his usual sarcasm replaced by genuine alarm. "Waiting for what? To destroy us?" Alina shook her head, her mind still reeling from the visions. "No, to test us, to see if we're worthy of understanding it. The civilization that built this structure, they tried to control it, and it destroyed them. But they left this behind as a warning, a way to communicate with it, and now it's chosen us." Priya's voice was calm but urgent. "What did it show you, Elena? What do we need to do?" Elena took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on the pedestal. "It showed me the consequences of our choices. If we try to control the anomaly, if we try to harness its power, we'll fail. It's too vast, too ancient. But if we understand it, if we respect it, we might be able to coexist, to seal the gate without destroying ourselves in the process." The team fell silent, the weight of her words pressing down on them. The chamber seemed to hum faintly, as if the structure itself were aware of their decision. And as Alina prepared to take the next step, one thing was clear. The anomaly was no longer just a mystery. It was a living, breathing entity, and their fate, and the fate of the universe, hung in the balance. The pedestal's glow intensified, its symbols pulsing in rhythm with the anomaly's energy. Alina stepped forward, her resolve hardening. Whatever lay ahead, there was no turning back. The anomaly had chosen them, and now it was their turn to choose. Marcus lunged forward, gripping Elena's arm with a force born of desperation. "Alina, snap out of it," he shouted, his voice cracking under the strain. "Whatever it's showing you, it's not real." But Alina didn't budge. Her eyes remained fixed on the pedestal, her hand still pressed firmly against its glowing surface. The air around her seemed to shimmer, distorting as if the very fabric of reality were bending under the weight of the anomaly's influence. Priya moved to Marcus's side, her hands trembling as she tried to pull Alina back. "Elena, please," she pleaded, her voice softer but no less urgent. "You're not just seeing visions, you're being consumed. If you don't let go, it's going to take you with it." But Alina's voice came out in a whisper, barely audible over the growing hum of energy in the chamber. "It's showing me everything, past, present, future. We have to stop this. We have to stop it now." The holographic display behind them flickered wildly, the images of destruction growing more chaotic. The anomaly's energy surged, the structure trembling as if it were on the verge of collapse. Marcus glanced at the walls, his eyes widening as cracks began to form in the metallic surface. "She's not just seeing it, she's connected to it," he said, his voice tight with realization. "If we don't break that connection, the whole thing's going to blow." Priya's mind raced as she scanned the pedestal with her handheld device. The energy levels are off the charts. If this keeps up, the anomaly will destabilize completely. We're talking about a chain reaction that could tear through this entire sector of space. She looked up at Alina, her expression a mix of fear and determination. "We need to pull her out now." Together, Marcus and Priya yanked Alina backward with all their strength. For a moment, it seemed like it wouldn't be enough. Her hand remained glued to the pedestal, the connection unbroken. But then, with a final, collective effort, they managed to pull her free. Alina stumbled back, her legs buckling as she collapsed into their arms. The pedestal's glow dimmed, the symbols fading as the anomaly's energy receded, but the damage was already done. The chamber was crumbling around them, the walls groaning under the strain of the destabilizing force. Alina's breathing was ragged, her eyes wide and unfocused as she struggled to speak. "It's too late," she gasped. "The anomaly, it's not just a force, it's a decision, a choice, and we're running out of time to make it." Marcus shook his head, his grip on her tightening. "What are you talking about? What choice?" Alina's voice was weak but insistent. "It's not about controlling it, it's about understanding the anomaly. It's alive, it's been waiting for us to see the truth, and now it's forcing us to decide. Either we seal the gate and accept our limits, or we open it and risk everything." Priya's face paled as the implications sank in. "If we seal it, we might stop the anomaly from spreading, but if we open it, we could unleash something far worse. Something we can't control." The chamber shuddered violently, a deep crack splitting the floor as the anomaly's energy surged once more. Marcus helped Alina to her feet, his voice urgent. "We need to move. If this place collapses, we're not getting out alive." But Alina's gaze remained fixed on the pedestal, her expression haunted. "It's not just about us. It's about everyone, every star, every planet, every life out there. If we don't stop this now, it's not just the anomaly that's at risk, it's the entire universe." The team exchanged a tense glance, the weight of the decision pressing down on them. The anomaly's hum grew louder, a deafening crescendo that seemed to echo through the very core of their being. And as the chamber began to collapse around them, one thing was clear. The choice they made next would determine not just their fate, but the fate of everything. The Aether shuddered violently, its hull groaning under the strain of the Anomaly's gravitational pull. Warning lights flashed across the bridge, their crimson glow casting long shadows over the crew. Marcus gripped the console as the ship's systems began to fail, one by one. "Engines are at 50% and dropping," he barked, his voice tight with urgency. "If we don't get out of here in the next 60 seconds, we're not going anywhere." Alina's hands flew over the controls, her focus razor sharp despite the chaos around her. The alien structure was collapsing, its walls buckling under the weight of the Anomaly's destabilizing energy, but she couldn't leave. "Not yet. I need more time," she said, her voice steady but laced with tension. "The data stream, it's not complete." Priya glanced at the readouts, her expression grim. "Elena, we don't have time. The Anomaly's gravitational field is spiking. If we don't break free now, we'll be pulled in, and there's no coming back from that." Elena's gaze didn't waver. 30 seconds, that's all I need." Her fingers danced across the interface, downloading fragments of the alien data as the ship's systems continued to fail. The holographic display flickered, showing glimpses of the information she was trying to salvage: coordinates, schematics, and something else, something she couldn't quite decipher. The Aether lurched suddenly, throwing the crew off balance. Marcus swore under his breath as he struggled to stabilize the engines. "We're losing power fast." "If you've got what you need, now's the time to say so." Elena's eyes flicked to the progress bar on her screen. "Almost there," she said, her voice barely audible over the alarms. The data stream was fragmenting, breaking apart as the Anomaly's interference intensified, but she couldn't stop now, not when they were so close. The ship shook again, more violently this time. "Elena," Marcus shouted, his voice sharp with desperation. "We're out of time." "Got it," she replied, slamming her hand on the console. The download completed just as the Aether's engines roared to life, their thrusters straining against the Anomaly's pull. The ship groaned as it began to move, slowly at first, then faster as the engines reached full power. "Hang on," Marcus yelled, his hands gripping the controls as he pushed the ship to its limits. The Aether shot forward, its hull screaming under the strain. The Anomaly loomed behind them, its swirling mass growing smaller as they raced toward safety. Priya glanced at Alina, her expression a mix of relief and curiosity. "What did you get?" Elena exhaled sharply, her hands still trembling from the adrenaline. "A fragment of the alien data," she said, her voice low but steady. "It's incomplete, but there's enough to work with: coordinates, mostly, to another anomaly. And something else, something I can't explain yet." Marcus glanced at her, his usual sarcasm tempered by the gravity of the moment. "Another anomaly. Great, just what we need: more cosmic mysteries." Elena's gaze was distant, her mind already racing ahead. "This isn't just another anomaly," she said quietly. "It's connected to this one, to the structure, to everything. And if I'm right, it's the key to stopping this before it's too late." The Aether broke free of the Anomaly's pull, its engines stabilizing as it surged into open space. Behind them, the Anomaly pulsed faintly, its energy still flickering like a dying ember, but the crew knew better. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. As the ship sped away, Alina stared at the coordinates on her screen, her mind already turning over the possibilities. The data fragment was incomplete, but it was enough. Enough to point them in a new direction, enough to keep them moving forward. And as the Aether disappeared into the void, one question lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. What waited for them at the other end? The research station felt eerily quiet after the chaos of the Anomaly. The hum of the ship's engines had been replaced by the soft whir of computers, and the occasional beep of instruments. Alina stood at the center of the lab, the dim light casting long shadows across the room. Her team gathered around her, their faces a mix of exhaustion and curiosity. The air was thick with tension, the weight of what they had just experienced hanging over them like a storm cloud. Alina activated the holographic display, and the room was bathed in a soft blue glow. The alien data she had salvaged from the collapsing structure shimmered into view, forming a complex web of lines and points. At first, it was difficult to discern any pattern, but as the image stabilized, the truth became clear. "This," she said, her voice steady but tinged with awe, "is a map of anomalies scattered across the galaxy." The team leaned in closer, their eyes scanning the intricate network. Each point on the map represented an anomaly, pulsating faintly like a heartbeat. But these weren't random, they were connected, forming a vast, interlocking system. Priya was the first to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's a network of locks." Alina nodded, her gaze fixed on the hologram. "Exactly. Each anomaly is a lock, containing a piece of the forbidden truth. The structure we encounter, it was just one piece of the puzzle. These others, they're part of the same system, and if we're going to stop the anomaly from spreading, we need to understand what's behind them." Marcus crossed his arms, his skepticism evident. "So, what, we're supposed to just hop from anomaly to anomaly, poking at cosmic locks until one of them blows up in our faces? Sounds like a great plan." Alina turned to him, her expression resolute. "It's not just about poking at locks, Marcus. It's about understanding what's inside them, the civilization that built these structures. They knew something we don't. Something so dangerous, so catastrophic, that they went to extraordinary lengths to keep it contained. But they also left clues, instructions. They wanted someone to find them, to understand. And now, it's us." Priya stepped forward, her analytical mind already dissecting the implications. "If these anomalies are connected, it means they're part of a larger system. A system designed to hold back something we can't even begin to comprehend. But if we can piece together the clues, if we can understand the pattern, we might be able to stop this before it's too late." Alina's eyes swept over the team, her voice firm. "We don't have a choice. The anomaly is spreading, and if we don't act, it's not just our star systems that are at risk, it's the entire galaxy. We need to find the next anomaly, decode its lock, and uncover the truth behind it. It's the only way." The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over them like a heavy blanket. The hologram continued to pulse, its eerie light casting strange shadows on the walls. Marcus finally broke the silence, his voice low and grudging. "All right. Say we go along with this. Where do we start?" Alina turned back to the hologram, her fingers tracing the lines of the map. "Here," she said, pointing to a distant point on the edge of the network. "This anomaly is the closest. If we move quickly, we can reach it before the anomaly's spread cuts off our access. But we need to be prepared. Whatever we find there, it's not going to be easy." The team exchanged uneasy glances, the enormity of the task ahead sinking in. But as they looked at the map, at the vast network of anomalies waiting to be unlocked, one thing was clear. They were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The forbidden truth was out there, hidden behind locks scattered across the galaxy. And whether they were ready or not, they were the ones who would have to face it. The hologram flickered, its light casting strange patterns on the walls. And as the team prepared for their next mission, the question lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. What waited for them at the next anomaly? The answer, whatever it was, would change everything. The Interstellar Council's transmission, arrived without warning, its sharp, authoritative tone cutting through the quiet hum of the research station. Alina's heart sank as the holographic image of Counselor Arlen materialized before them, his expression stern and unyielding. Effective immediately, he declared, all anomalies within Council jurisdiction are hereby classified as restricted zones. Any unauthorized exploration or interference will be met with severe consequences. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the room in stunned silence. Marcus was the first to react, his usual sarcasm laced with frustration. Well, that's convenient. Just when we're on the verge of figuring this out, they slammed the door in our faces. He crossed his arms, his gaze flicking to Alina. What's the plan now? Play nice and sit this one out. Alina's jaw tightened as she processed the Council's edict. The timing was too perfect, too deliberate. It wasn't just about control, it was about fear. The Council had seen the data, the reports of the Anomaly's rapid expansion, and instead of acting, they had chosen to bury it. We can't stop now, she said, her voice low but resolute. If we do, we're condemning entire star systems to the same fate as the civilization we saw in that structure. We can't let fear dictate our actions. Priya stepped forward, her calm demeanor a stark contrast to Marcus's agitation. The Council's decision isn't just about containment, it's about maintaining control. They're afraid of what we might uncover, of what it could mean for their authority, but that doesn't mean we have to comply. Alina nodded, her mind already racing ahead. If we're going to continue, we'll need to do it off the books. No official channels, no Council oversight, just us. She glanced at Marcus and Priya, her gaze steady. I can't force you to come with me. This is dangerous, and if we're caught, the consequences will be severe. But if we don't act, no one will. Marcus let out a long breath, running a hand through his hair. You really know how to make a guy feel special, Alina, but fine. If we're going rogue, count me in. Someone's got to keep you from blowing us all up. Priya's lips curved into a faint smile, though her eyes remained serious. I'm with you, Alina. This isn't just about science and amour, it's about survival. If the Council won't act, we have to. With their decision made, the team moved quickly, assembling the resources they would need for their unsanctioned mission. The research station's secure systems were scrubbed of any incriminating data, and supplies were discreetly loaded onto a small, unregistered vessel. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. As the ship prepared for departure, Elena couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over her. The Council's interference was a complication she hadn't anticipated, but it only reinforced the urgency of their mission. The anomalies weren't just a scientific curiosity. They were a threat, one that the Council was either unwilling or unable to address. And if they didn't act, no one would. The ship's engines roared to life, the vibration resonating through the hull as they lifted off from the station. Alina stared out at the stars, their distant light a reminder of the vast, uncharted territory that lay ahead. The Council's edict had drawn a line in the sand, but Alina and her team had already crossed it. Whatever lay ahead, whether it was answers, danger, or both, they would face it together. The stars blurred as the ship accelerated, leaving the research station and the Council's restrictions far behind. The anomalies waited, their secrets hidden behind locks scattered across the galaxy. And as the team set their course for the next anomaly, one thing was clear. The forbidden truth was out there, and they were the only ones willing to uncover it. The ship's thrusters hummed softly as it slipped into the void, the research station shrinking to a faint speck of light behind them. Alina sat at the helm, her fingers hovering over the navigation console. The coordinates to the next anomaly glowed faintly on the screen, a distant beacon in the vast, uncharted expanse of space. The crew was silent, the weight of their unsanctioned mission pressing heavily on their shoulders. They were no longer just explorers, they were fugitives, defying the Council's orders in pursuit of a truth that could save, or doom, the galaxy. "We'll need to avoid the main shipping lanes," Priya said, breaking the silence. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were sharp with focus as she scanned the star map. "Council patrols are thickest near the core systems. If we stick to the outer rim, we can stay off their radar." Marcus leaned back in his seat, arms crossed. "Great. So we're dodging patrols in the middle of nowhere while trying to find a cosmic lock that might not even want to be found. This just keeps getting better." Alina's gaze remained fixed on the coordinates. "We don't have a choice. The anomaly's spreading faster than we anticipated. If we don't act now, we might not get another chance." The ship glided through the darkness, its sensors scanning for signs of Council patrols. Hours passed in tense silence, the crew alert for any sign of trouble. Then, as they approached the edge of a barren star system, the sensors pinged a faint signal, weak but persistent. Alina frowned, leaning forward. "That's not a patrol. It's something else." The signal led them to a derelict alien vessel, its hull scarred and pitted from centuries of drifting through space. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, its design angular and asymmetrical, with strange organic curves that seemed to defy conventional engineering. The ship's lights were dark, its engine silent, but the signal continued to pulse, a faint heartbeat in the void. "What is this thing?" Marcus muttered, his usual sarcasm replaced by curiosity. "It's not from any species I've ever heard of." Priya adjusted the sensors, her brow furrowed. "The energy signature is ancient. This ship has been here for a long time. But the signal, it's not random. It's repeating a pattern, almost like a warning." Alina's pulse quickened. "We need to board it. If there's any information here, anything that can help us understand the anomalies, we have to find it." The team suited up and approached the derelict ship, their movements cautious but determined. The airlock hissed open with a groan, revealing a dim, cavernous interior. The walls were lined with strange carvings, their shapes twisting and shifting as if alive. The air was thick with the scent of dust and decay, but beneath it was something else, a faint, almost imperceptible hum, like the whisper of a long-forgotten voice. As they ventured deeper into the ship, the carvings grew more intricate, their patterns forming a narrative that seemed to stretch across the walls. Priya paused, her handheld scanner illuminating the symbols. "These aren't just decorations," she said, her voice tinged with awe. "It's a story, a warning." Alina stepped closer, her eyes tracing the shapes. The carvings depicted a civilization, an ancient, powerful race that had discovered the anomalies. They had tried to harness their power, to unlock the secrets hidden within, but something had gone wrong. The carvings showed destruction on a cosmic scale, entire worlds consumed by the anomalies spreading darkness. And then, at the center of it all, was a figure, a massive, shadowy being, its form indistinct but radiating a sense of overwhelming power. "The Watchers," Priya murmured, translating the symbols beneath the figure. "They're called the Watchers. They guard the forbidden truth, ensuring that no one can unlock it without paying the ultimate price." Marcus let out a low whistle. "So, we've got cosmic locks, ancient warnings, and now shadowy guardians. This just keeps getting weirder." Alina's mind raced as she studied the carvings. The Watchers weren't just a myth, they were real, and if they were guarding the anomalies, it meant the forbidden truth was even more dangerous than they had imagined. But it also meant they were on the right path. The anomalies weren't just random phenomena, they were part of a system, a system designed to keep something unimaginable contained. "We need to keep moving," Elena said, her voice firm. "The Watchers might be a threat, but they're also a clue. If we can find out more about them, we might be able to stop the anomaly before it's too late." The crew moved deeper into the derelict ship, the hum growing louder with every step. The carvings seemed to shift as they passed, their patterns forming new shapes, new warnings. And as they reached the heart of the vessel, they found something that made even Marcus fall silent. A massive, circular chamber, its walls covered in glowing symbols. At its center was a pedestal, identical to the one they had encountered in the first anomaly. Alina stepped forward, her heart pounding. The pedestal pulsed faintly, its light casting strange shadows on the walls. She reached out, her hand hovering just above its surface. The hum grew louder, almost deafening, and for a moment she felt as if the ship itself were alive, watching her, waiting. "Elena," Priya said softly, her voice barely audible over the hum. "Are you sure about this?" Elena hesitated, her hand trembling. Then, with a deep breath, she placed her hand on the pedestal. The light flared, and the chamber dissolved into a swirl of images, visions of the Watchers, of the anomalies, of the forbidden truth, hidden behind the locks. And as the visions overwhelmed her, one thought echoed in her mind: this was just the beginning. The chamber's light dimmed as the visions faded, leaving Elena standing motionless, her hand still pressed against the pedestal. The hum that had filled the air moments before was gone, replaced by an eerie silence. The team watched her, their expressions a mix of concern and anticipation. Slowly, Elena lowered her hand, her eyes distant as she processed what she had seen. "The logs," she began, her voice steady but heavy with the weight of the revelation. "They're not just warnings. They're records, the Watchers. They're not just guardians. They're a race, an ancient, advanced civilization, and they're the ones who built the anomalies. Not to harness them, but to contain them." Priya's eyes widened. "Contain them? You mean the anomalies aren't natural?" Elena shook her head. "No, they're artificial prisons, designed to hold something far more dangerous. The Watchers discovered a force, a kind of energy so volatile, so destructive, that it threatened to unravel the very fabric of reality. They called it the primordial shadow. It's not just dark matter. It's something more. Something alive." Marcus crossed his arms, his skepticism battling with the unease in his voice. "Alive? You're saying we've been poking around in cosmic jail cells this whole time?" Elena nodded grimly. "Exactly. The Watchers realized that this force couldn't be destroyed, so they did the next best thing. They locked it away. The anomalies are the locks, and the structures we've found are the keys. But the locks are failing. The primordial shadow is breaking free, and if it escapes completely..." She trailed off, the unspoken implication hanging in the air. Priya finished the thought, her voice barely above a whisper. "It'll consume everything. Stars, planets, entire galaxies. The Watchers didn't just build these anomalies to protect themselves. They built them to protect the universe." The team fell silent, the enormity of the revelation sinking in. The derelict ship around them seemed to hum faintly, as if echoing the truth of its creator's sacrifice. Elena stepped back from the pedestal, her mind racing. The logs also mentioned something else, a failsafe, a way to reinforce the locks, to keep the primordial shadow contained. But it's not going to be easy. The Watchers knew that one day, someone would have to face this, and now, it's us. Priya's brow furrowed as she considered the implications. If the failsafe exists, it's likely tied to the anomalies themselves. We'd need to activate it across the entire network, but that would require accessing every anomaly, every lock. It's a monumental task, Marcus let out a low whistle, and here I thought we were just dealing with one cosmic headache. Now you're telling me there's a whole network of these things. Alina's gaze was steady, her resolve unshaken. We don't have a choice. The anomalies are failing faster than we anticipated. If we don't act, the primordial shadow will break free. And when it does, there won't be anything left to save. The team exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of their mission pressing down on them. The derelict ship's carvings seemed to shimmer faintly, their patterns shifting as if to emphasize the urgency of their task. Elena turned back to the pedestal, her fingers tracing the glowing symbols. We need to find the next anomaly, and this time, we're not just unlocking the truth, we're trying to save it. As the crew prepared to leave the derelict ship, the hum returned, faint but insistent, as if the watchers themselves were urging them forward. The anomalies waited, their secrets hidden behind locks scattered across the galaxy. And as the team set their course for the next one question lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. Would they be able to seal the locks in time? Or would the primordial shadow break free, unleashing a darkness unlike anything the universe had ever known? The Aether emerged from the void, its sleek hull reflecting the faint glow of a distant star. Ahead, the second anomaly loomed like a storm of cosmic fury. It was vast, its swirling mass of dark matter, crackling with faint bursts of energy that lit up the surrounding space in erratic flashes. The crew watched in silence, the tension palpable as the ship's sensors struggled to make sense of the chaotic readings. This anomaly was different from the first, more volatile, more alive. Alina leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she studied the data. The energy signature matches the first anomaly, but it's amplified. It's like whatever's inside is struggling to break free. She glanced at Priya, who was already analyzing the readings. What do we know about this one? Priya's fingers danced across the console, her expression focused. It's definitely part of the network. The energy patterns are consistent with the other anomaly, but there's something else here. A structure, just like before. But it's different, bigger, and it's emitting a signal. Marcus, ever the skeptic, let out a low whistle. Bigger and louder, just what we need. Any chance this one's friendly? Elena ignored the sarcasm, her attention fixed on the holographic display. Let's find out. Marcus, bring us in closer, but keep a safe distance. We don't know what we're dealing with here. The Aether edged closer to the anomaly, its engines humming softly as it navigated the turbulent energy field. The structure came into view slowly, its massive form materializing from the swirling darkness. It was unlike anything they had seen before, towering and angular, with sharp, geometric lines that seemed to defy the chaos around it. Its surface shimmered faintly, reflecting the anomaly's erratic light, and at its base stood a figure, still and silent. Marcus froze, his hand hovering over the controls. Is that a watcher? Elena whispered, her voice barely audible. The figure was massive, its form humanoid but distinctly alien, with smooth, obsidian-like skin and glowing, geometric patterns etched across its body. Its head was featureless, save for faintly glowing lines that traced the outline of what might have been a face. It stood motionless, its presence both imposing and eerily calm. Priya adjusted the sensors, her voice tense. It's dormant, for now, but it's definitely the same type of being we saw in the logs. The energy readings match. Elena's mind raced. The watchers were real, and this one was guarding the anomaly. But why? What was it protecting? We need to get closer, she said, her voice firm. If this watcher has the answers we're looking for, we have to try. Marcus shot her a wary look. And if it wakes up and decides we're lunch, then we'll deal with that when it happens. Elena replied, her tone leaving no room for argument. But we can't afford to turn back now. The ether descended slowly, its thrusters barely audible as it approached the structure. The watcher remained still, its glowing patterns pulsing faintly in rhythm with the Anomaly's energy. For a moment, it seemed as though the crew might go unnoticed, until the watcher's head tilted slightly, its glowing lines flaring to life. The air inside the ship seemed to grow heavier as the watcher's voice echoed through their minds, deep and resonant, bypassing their ears entirely. Intruders, you are not permitted here. Leave now or face annihilation. The crew froze, the weight of the watcher's words pressing down on them like a physical force. Elena swallowed hard, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. We mean no harm, we're here to understand, to stop the anomalies from spreading. Please, we need your help. The watcher's head tilted again, its glowing patterns shifting as if considering her words. For a moment, there was silence, then the watcher's voice returned, colder and more commanding. The locks must remain sealed. The primordial shadow cannot be freed. Leave or be destroyed. Marcus's hands tightened on the controls. Elena, we need to go. Now, but Alina didn't move, her gaze locked on the watcher. We can't leave. If the locks are failing, we need to know how to fix them. Please help us. The watcher's glowing patterns flared brighter, its voice booming with finality. You have been warned. Its massive form shifted, and the anomaly behind it seemed to surge, its energy crackling with newfound intensity. The Aether shuddered as the watcher raised its hand, a pulse of energy radiating outward. Marcus didn't wait for orders. He slammed the thrusters into reverse, the ship lurching backward as the watcher's energy wave narrowly missed them. Elena gripped the console, her heart pounding. We're not done here, she said, her voice firm despite the chaos. We need to find another way. The watcher's form receded as the ether retreated, its glowing patterns fading into the darkness. But its warning lingered, a haunting reminder of the stakes. The anomalies were more than just locks. They were a line of defense against something unimaginable. And as the crew regrouped, one thing was clear. They couldn't let fear stop them. The primordial shadow was waiting, and if they didn't act, it would break free, and there would be no one left to stop it. The Aether shuddered violently as the watcher's energy pulse narrowly missed its hull, the anomaly behind it surging with renewed fury. Elena gripped the console, her knuckles white as the ship stabilized. The crew exchanged tense glances, the watcher's words still echoing in their minds. Understanding is the first step to destruction, but Alina wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Bring us back in, she said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. We're not leaving without answers. Marcus shot her a look, his usual sarcasm replaced by genuine concern. Elena, that thing just tried to vaporize us. I'm all for bravery, but there's a fine line between bravery and suicide. Priya, ever the voice of reason, interjected. The watcher's reaction suggests it's protecting something critical, something it doesn't want us to know. But if we can communicate, if we can show it we're not a threat, maybe it'll listen. Elena nodded, her mind racing. We need to try. If the Watchers are the guardians of the anomalies, they hold the key to the failsafe. We can't afford to walk away. The Aether edged closer once more, its thrusters barely audible as it approached the towering structure. The Watcher stood motionless, its glowing patterns pulsing faintly, but its head tilted slightly as the ship drew near. Alina activated the external comms, her voice calm but urgent. We are not your enemies. We seek only to understand, to prevent the primordial shadow from breaking free. Please help us. For a moment, there was silence. Then the Watcher's voice echoed through their minds again, deeper and more resonant than before. Your kind has always sought understanding. Each time, it has led to ruin. The locks must remain sealed. The cost of curiosity is annihilation. Alina's jaw tightened. We're not like the others. We've seen what happens when the locks fail. We don't want to open them. We want to reinforce them, but we can't do it alone. We need your knowledge. The Watcher's glowing patterns flared brighter, its voice cold and unyielding. You seek to mend what you do not comprehend. The locks were not made for you. They were made to contain the inevitable. To interfere is to invite chaos. Marcus muttered under his breath. Well, this is going great. Elena ignored him, her focus unwavering. If the locks fail, the primordial shadow will consume everything. Your worlds, your people, ours. We're not asking for power. We're asking for a chance to save what's left. The Watcher's response was swift and final. Your words are meaningless. Your actions will bring destruction. Leave now or be erased. Before Alina could respond, the Watcher raised its hand, a surge of energy radiating outward. The Aether's alarms blared as the ship lurched backward, its shields straining under the force of the attack. Marcus cursed, his hands flying over the controls. We're out of time, Alina. If we don't go now, we're not going anywhere. Alina hesitated, her gaze locked on the Watcher's towering form. But as the ship's systems began to fail, she knew they had no choice. Fall back, she said, her voice heavy with frustration. We'll regroup and find another way. The Aether retreated, its thrusters roaring as it put distance between itself and the Anomaly. The Watcher's form receded into the darkness, its glowing patterns fading like dying embers, but its warning lingered, a haunting reminder of the stakes. As the crew caught their breath, Priya broke the silence. The Watcher's not going to help us. If we're going to reinforce the locks, we'll have to do it without them. Alina nodded, her mind already racing ahead. Then we'll find another way. The Watchers built these anomalies. They left clues, safeguards. We just need to piece it together. The ship's lights flickered as it moved further from the Anomaly, the crew's resolve unshaken. The Watcher's words echoed in Alina's mind. Understanding is the first step to destruction. But she couldn't shake the feeling that understanding was also the key to survival. And as the Aether disappeared into the void, one thing was clear. They were running out of time and options. The Aether drifted in silence, its engines idling as the crew gathered in the central lab. The tension was palpable, the weight of their failed encounter with the Watcher still pressing heavily on them. Marcus leaned against a console, his arms crossed, his usual sarcasm replaced by a rare intensity. We're not getting anywhere playing nice, he said, his voice low but firm. That thing's not going to let us near the Anomaly, and we can't exactly ask it to step aside. So, here's an idea. We hit it with an EMP. Alina's brow furrowed as she turned to him. An EMP, that's a long shot, Marcus. The Watcher's technology is ancient, way beyond anything we've ever encountered. What makes you think that would work? Marcus smirked, though his eyes remained serious. Because I've been tinkering with the ship's systems. I've got a modified EMP device that can deliver a pulse strong enough to knock out even the most advanced tech. If we can disrupt the Watcher's systems, even for a few seconds, it might give us the window we need to get close to the Anomaly. Priya raised an eyebrow, her skepticism evident. And if it doesn't work, or worse, if it makes the Watcher even more hostile? Marcus shrugged, his confidence undeterred. Then we're no worse off than we are now. But if it works, we might finally get a shot at figuring out how to reinforce the locks. We're out of options, Alina. This is it. Alina hesitated, weighing the risks. The Watcher's warnings echoed in her mind, but so did the image of the Anomaly's relentless expansion. They couldn't afford to wait, not when the primordial shadow was inching closer to freedom. "All right," she said finally, "but we do this carefully. One wrong move, and we're not just risking ourselves, we're risking everything." The team moved quickly, preparing the modified EMP device. Marcus worked tirelessly, adjusting the settings to maximize its output while minimizing the risk to the ether. The device was small, no larger than a handheld scanner, but its potential was immense. As the ship approached the anomaly once more, the Watcher's towering form came into view, its glowing patterns pulsing faintly in the darkness. "Ready?" Marcus asked, his hand hovering over the device's activation switch. Alina nodded, her heart pounding. "Do it." Marcus pressed the switch, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then, a low hum filled the air, growing louder and louder until it became a deafening roar. A pulse of energy erupted from the device, a brilliant flash of light that surged toward the Watcher. The creature's glowing patterns flared brightly, its head snapping toward the aether as the pulse struck. For a brief moment, the Watcher froze, its form flickering like a malfunctioning hologram. The crew held their breath, hoping against hope that the plan had worked. But then, the Watcher's patterns flared even brighter, its voice echoing through their minds with a ferocity that made the air itself seem to tremble. "You dare defy the Guardians. Your arrogance will be your undoing." Before anyone could react, the anomaly behind the Watcher surged, its swirling mass expanding rapidly. The energy pulses grew more erratic, the darkness spreading like a virus, consuming the light around it. The aether's alarms blared as the ship was caught in the anomaly's gravitational pull, its systems straining under the sudden influx of energy. "Marcus, what did you do?" Elena shouted, her voice barely audible over the chaos. Marcus stared at the anomaly, his face pale. "I don't know. The EMP was supposed to disable it, not make it worse." Priya's hands flew over the console, her voice urgent. "The anomaly's expanding faster than before. If we don't get out of here, it's going to engulf the entire star system." Elena's mind raced, her thoughts a whirlwind of panic and determination. "Marcus, get us out of here, now." The aether's engines roared to life, the ship lurching as it struggled to break free of the anomaly's pull. The Watcher's form shimmered in the distance, its glowing patterns flaring brighter and brighter as the anomaly continued to grow. The crew watched in stunned silence as the darkness spread, consuming everything in its path. As the ship finally broke free and sped away, Alina couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled over her. The Watcher's warning echoed in her mind, "Your arrogance will be your undoing." They had tried to force their way to the truth, and now the consequences were unfolding before their eyes. The anomaly was no longer just a threat. It was a ticking time bomb, and they were running out of time to defuse it. The aether disappeared into the void, leaving the expanding anomaly behind. But the crew knew one thing for certain: this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The aether's engines hummed softly as it drifted through the void, the crew silent as they processed the aftermath of their encounter with the Watcher. Alina sat at the central console, her fingers tracing the holographic map of the anomalies. The data streamed in real time, each point on the map pulsing faintly, their connections forming a vast, intricate network. But something about it felt off. The anomalies weren't just random points in space. They were linked, their energy signatures resonating in harmony, like notes in a cosmic symphony. And now, after their failed attempt to stabilize one, the entire network seemed to be reacting, the anomalies pulsing faster, their energy growing more erratic. Alina's brow furrowed as she leaned closer to the display. "This isn't just a coincidence," she murmured, her voice low but laced with urgency. "The anomalies aren't isolated. They're part of a system, a network, and when we tampered with one, it set off a chain reaction." Priya glanced up from her console, her expression a mix of curiosity and concern. "A chain reaction? You mean like dominoes?" Alina nodded, her gaze fixed on the map. "Exactly. The Watcher wasn't just guarding that anomaly, it was guarding a piece of the network. And when we tried to disrupt it, we destabilized the entire system. The anomalies are feeding off each other, amplifying their energy. It's like they're alive." Marcus, who had been quietly tinkering with a damaged console, looked up sharply. "Alive? You're saying these things are sentient now?" "Not sentient," Elena corrected, her tone thoughtful. "But interconnected. The Watchers didn't just build these anomalies to contain the primordial shadow. They built them to work together, to create a barrier. But if one lock fails, the whole system starts to unravel." Priya's eyes widened as the implications sank in. "So, the anomalies aren't just failing individually, they are failing as a system. And if we don't stop it, the entire network could collapse." Alina's mind raced as she studied the map. The anomalies were spreading, their energy signatures growing more chaotic with each passing moment. But amidst the chaos, she noticed something, a pattern. The anomalies weren't just randomly connected. They radiated outward from a central point, like spokes on a wheel. And at the center of it all was a single anomaly, its energy signature unlike anything she had ever seen. "There," she said, pointing to the central point on the map. "That's the source, the heart of the network. If we can find it, if we can stabilize it, we might be able to stop the chain reaction before it's too late." Marcus frowned, his skepticism evident. "And how do you propose we do that? The Watchers didn't exactly roll out the welcome mat last time." Elena's expression hardened, her resolve unshaken. "We don't have a choice. The anomalies are spreading faster than we anticipated. If we don't act now, the entire network could fail. And when it does, the primordial shadow will break free. We need to find the source, and we need to do it fast." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of the task ahead pressing heavily on them. The anomalies were no longer just a series of locks. They were a ticking time bomb, and the source was the key to defusing it. But finding it wouldn't be easy. The central anomaly was deep within uncharted space, its location obscured by the very network it controlled. And even if they found it, there was no guarantee they could stabilize it without triggering another chain reaction. Priya broke the silence, her voice calm but tinged with urgency. "If the source is the heart of the network, it's likely the most heavily guarded. The Watchers wouldn't leave it unprotected. We'll need a plan, a way to approach it without setting off another collapse." Elena nodded, her mind already racing ahead. "We'll need to study the network, understand how the anomalies are connected. If we can find a way to isolate the source, we might be able to stabilize it without disrupting the rest of the system. But we'll need to move quickly. The anomalies are failing faster than we anticipated." The Aether's engines roared to life as the ship adjusted its course, its trajectory set for the heart of the network. The crew worked tirelessly, their movements precise but tinged with unease. The stakes had never been higher. The anomalies were no longer just a mystery. They were a threat, one that could unravel the very fabric of reality. As the ship hurtled through the void, one question lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. What waited for them at the source? The answer, whatever it was, would change everything. And as the anomalies pulsed faintly on the map, their energy growing more erratic with each passing moment, one thing was clear. They were running out of time. The Aether hurtled through the void, its engines straining as the crew worked tirelessly to decode the alien data. The holographic map displayed a labyrinth of anomalies, their connections pulsing faintly like veins in a cosmic body. At the center of it all was the source, a single, massive anomaly radiating an energy signature unlike anything they had ever seen. But reaching it wouldn't be easy. The most direct route led through a treacherous region of space, known only as the Void, a place where the laws of physics were said to unravel and sanity itself could be lost. Elena leaned over the console, her eyes scanning the alien symbols that scrolled across the screen. The Watcher's logs mention the Void, she said, her voice steady but laced with tension. It's not just empty space, it's a region where reality breaks down. Time, gravity, even causality. None of it behaves the way it should. If we're going to make it through, we'll need to follow their coordinates exactly. One wrong move, and we could be lost forever. Marcus glanced at the map, his usual sarcasm replaced by a rare seriousness. Great. So we're flying into a cosmic funhouse where up might be down and left might be right. What could possibly go wrong? Priya, her fingers dancing across her console, added, the Void isn't just a navigational hazard. According to the logs, it's also a kind of test. The Watchers designed it as a barrier, a way to ensure only the worthy could reach the source. If we can navigate it, it means we're ready for what comes next. Alina nodded, her mind racing. The Void is a filter. It's designed to weed out those who aren't prepared. But if we can make it through, we'll have proven ourselves to the Watchers, and maybe even to the Anomalies themselves. The crew fell silent, the weight of the task ahead pressing heavily on them. The Void wasn't just a physical challenge, it was a psychological one. The Watcher's logs described it as a place where the mind could unravel, where the boundaries between past, present, and future blurred into incomprehensible chaos. To navigate it, they would need more than just skill, they would need resolve. Set course for the Void, Alina ordered, her voice firm. We don't have time to waste. The anomalies are failing faster than we anticipated. If we don't reach the source soon, the entire network could collapse. The Aether adjusted its trajectory, its thrusters roaring as it accelerated toward the edge of the Void. The stars ahead seemed to shimmer faintly, their light distorted as if viewed through a fractured lens. The crew braced themselves as the ship crossed the threshold, the transition marked by a sudden, eerie silence. The hum of the engines faded, replaced by a hollow, almost oppressive stillness. Inside the Void, the laws of physics no longer applied. The ship's instruments flickered erratically, their readings nonsensical. The crew felt a strange, disorienting sensation, as if the very fabric of reality were shifting around them. Time seemed to stretch and contract, moments passing in a blur or dragging on interminably. The stars outside the viewport twisted and spiraled, their light bending in impossible ways. Marcus gripped the controls, his knuckles white. This is not normal. The ship's systems are going haywire. I'm not even sure which way is up anymore. Elena's voice was calm but urgent. Focus on the Watcher's coordinates. They're our only guide. If we deviate, even by a fraction, we'll be lost. Priya's hands moved swiftly over her console, her analytical mind struggling to make sense of the chaos. The Void is playing tricks on us. It's like it's alive. It's testing us, trying to make us doubt ourselves. As the ship pressed deeper into the Void, the crew began to experience strange, unsettling visions. Alina saw herself standing on the bridge of the Aether, but the ship was in ruins, its hull cracked and scorched. Marcus found himself back on Earth, in a city consumed by the anomalies spreading darkness. Priya saw the Watchers, their glowing forms towering over her, their voices echoing in her mind. "You are not ready." The visions grew more intense, more vivid, until it was nearly impossible to distinguish reality from illusion. The crew clung to the Watcher's coordinates, their only lifeline in the chaos. But as the void's distortions intensified, even the coordinates began to shift, their values changing in ways that defied logic. Alina's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and commanding. "Stay focused. The void is trying to break us, but we can't let it. The anomalies are counting on us. The universe is counting on us." The crew fought through the disorientation, their resolve hardening as they pressed forward. The ship's systems continued to fail, their readings erratic and unreliable. But the ether pressed on, its thrusters straining against the void's oppressive stillness. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the ship broke free, the distortions fading as it emerged on the other side. The stars returned to their normal positions, their light steady and reassuring. The crew exhaled collectively, their relief palpable. But as the ether adjusted its course toward the source, one question lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. What waited for them at the heart of the network? The void had been a test, a trial by fire, and as the ship hurtled toward the source, the crew knew one thing for certain. They were about to face their greatest challenge yet. The ether drifted deeper into the void, its engines eerily silent as the laws of physics unraveled around it. The crew clung to their stations, their senses assaulted by the impossible. Time itself seemed to warp, moments stretching into hours and hours collapsing into seconds. The ship's instruments flickered erratically, their readings nonsensical, as if reality itself were laughing at their attempts to make sense of it. Alina gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles white as she tried to focus. The Watcher's coordinates were their only lifeline, but even they seemed to shift and change, their values fluctuating wildly. "Stay on course," she said, her voice steady but strained. "The void is messing with us, but we can't let it win." Marcus, usually the first to crack a joke, was uncharacteristically silent. His hands trembled as he adjusted the controls, his eyes darting to the viewport, where the stars twisted and spiraled in impossible patterns. "This isn't just space," he muttered, his voice barely audible. "It's something else, something alive." Priya, ever the voice of reason, tried to anchor the crew in logic. "The void isn't just a physical barrier, it's a psychological one. The Watchers designed it to test us, to see if we're strong enough to face what's at the source. We need to stay focused. If we lose our grip on reality, we're done." But the void wasn't just testing their minds, it was testing their unity. The crew began to experience strange, disorienting visions, each one tailored to their deepest fears and regrets. Alina found herself back on the research station, the alarms blaring as the Anomaly breached containment. She saw her team falling one by one, their faces frozen in terror as the darkness consumed them. She reached out, trying to save them, but her hands passed through them like smoke. Marcus was back on Earth, standing in the ruins of his childhood home. The Anomaly had spread, its darkness swallowing the city whole. He tried to run, to find his family, but the streets twisted and turned, leading him in endless circles. The air grew heavier, pressing down on him until he could barely breathe. Priya's vision was different, less personal, but no less terrifying. She saw the Watchers, their glowing forms towering over her, their voices echoing in her mind. "You are not ready. You will never be ready." The words reverberated through her, a crushing weight of doubt and despair. The visions grew more intense, more vivid, until it was nearly impossible to distinguish reality from illusion. The crew's unity began to fray, their trust in each other eroding under the strain. Elena found herself questioning Marcus's every decision, his every move. Priya's calm demeanor cracked, her frustration boiling over as she struggled to make sense of the chaos. "We can't keep going like this," Marcus snapped, his voice sharp with frustration. "We're not just fighting the void, we're fighting ourselves. If we don't get it together, we're going to tear each other apart." Alina took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus. "Marcus is right. The void is playing on our fears, trying to break us, but we can't let it. We're stronger than this. We've faced the anomalies, the watchers, the primordial shadow. We can face this too." Priya nodded, her expression resolute. "The void is a test, but it's also a mirror. It shows us what we're afraid of, what's holding us back. If we can confront that, if we can face it head on, we can get through this." The crew took a moment to regroup, their resolve hardening as they prepared to press forward. The void's distortions intensified, the air growing heavier, the visions more vivid, but the crew fought through it, their unity their greatest weapon against the chaos. As the ether pressed deeper into the void, one question lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. What waited for them at the heart of the network? The void had been a test, a trial by fire, and as the ship hurtled toward the source, the crew knew one thing for certain. They were about to face their greatest challenge yet. The ether's thrusters hummed faintly as the ship pressed deeper into the void, the distortions of reality growing more intense with each passing moment. Alina gripped the console, her knuckles white as she tried to maintain focus. The crew had fought through their own personal visions, their unity tested but unbroken. Yet as the ship neared the edge of the void, a new wave of disorientation swept over Elena, stronger and more vivid than anything she had experienced before. The bridge around her dissolved, the familiar hum of the engines replaced by an eerie, oppressive silence. She found herself standing in a vast, empty expanse, the darkness stretching infinitely in every direction. Before her, a massive structure loomed, a dark matter singularity, its swirling mass of energy pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. It was immense, dwarfing even the largest anomalies they had encountered, its surface rippling with faint, geometric patterns that seemed to shift and twist as if alive. Surrounding the singularity was a fleet of watcher ships, their sleek, angular forms glowing faintly with the same geometric patterns as the watchers themselves. The ships moved in perfect unison, their movements precise and deliberate, like guardians standing watch over an ancient, forbidden treasure. The sight was both awe-inspiring and terrifying, a testament to the Watcher's power and the enormity of what they were protecting. As Alina watched, a voice echoed through the void, deep and resonant, bypassing her ears and reverberating directly in her mind. "The truth will consume you." The words were not spoken in a language she understood, yet their meaning was unmistakable. They carried a weight, a finality, as if the very act of seeking the truth was a path to destruction. Alina's breath caught in her throat, her heart pounding as the vision intensified. The singularity seemed to pulse faster, its energy growing more erratic, more chaotic. The watcher ships began to move, their glowing patterns flaring brighter as they turned toward her, their movements deliberate and menacing. The voice spoke again, louder this time, more insistent. "Turn back, the truth is not for you." But Alina didn't move. The fear that had gripped her moments before began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of determination. She had come too far, sacrificed too much, to turn back now. The anomalies were failing, the network unraveling, and the primordial shadow was inching closer to freedom. The truth might be dangerous, it might be devastating, but it was also necessary. humanity. No, the entire universe depended on it. She took a step forward, her gaze fixed on the singularity. "I'm not afraid," she said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "The truth might consume me, but it's the only way to save what's left." The Watcher ships paused, their glowing patterns dimming slightly as if considering her words. The voice returned, softer this time, almost curious. "You seek understanding, but at what cost? The truth will change you. It will change everything." Alina's resolve hardened. "Then I'll face it. Whatever the cost, whatever the risk, I'll face it. Because if I don't, there won't be anything left to save." The vision began to fade, the singularity and the Watcher ships dissolving into the darkness. The bridge of the aether reappeared around her, the hum of the engines returning like a comforting embrace. Marcus and Priya were staring at her, their expressions a mix of concern and confusion. "Elena," Priya asked, her voice tentative, "what happened? You were somewhere else." Elena took a deep breath, her hands still trembling but her voice steady. "I saw it, the source. It's not just an anomaly. It's the heart of the network, and the Watchers, they're guarding it. They said the truth would consume me, but I'm not turning back." "We can't turn back." Marcus frowned, his usual skepticism tempered by the gravity of her words. "So, what's the plan? Fly straight into the heart of the storm and hope we don't get vaporized?" Elena's gaze was unwavering. "We've come this far. We've faced the void, the Watchers, the anomalies. We're not stopping now. The source is our only chance. If we can stabilize it, we can stop the chain reaction. And if it means facing the truth, no matter how dangerous, then that's what we'll do." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of her words settling over them like a heavy blanket. The stakes had never been higher. The source was more than just a mystery. It was a crucible, a test of their resolve, their courage, their humanity. And as the aether continued its journey, one thing was clear. The truth waited for them, and it would change everything. The aether shuddered as it finally broke free from the void, the oppressive distortions of reality fading into the crisp, cold clarity of open space. Ahead, the source anomaly loomed like a cosmic monolith, a colossal black hole, its event horizon a swirling maelstrom of darkness that seemed to devour the light of nearby stars. Surrounding it were the ruins of an ancient alien civilization, their structures jagged and angular, their surfaces etched with the same geometric patterns they had seen on the Watchers and the Anomalies. The ruins floated in a chaotic orbit around the black hole, their once majestic forms now crumbling under the relentless pull of gravity. It was a haunting sight, a graveyard of a forgotten empire that had dared to challenge the forces of the universe. The crew stared in silence, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on them. This wasn't just another anomaly, it was the heart of the network, the linchpin holding the entire system together. And it was failing. The black hole's event horizon pulsed faintly, its energy signature erratic and unstable, as if it were straining against an invisible leash. The ruins around it seemed to hum faintly, their geometric patterns glowing with a dim, sickly light. Priya was the first to break the silence, her voice low but urgent. "The energy readings are off the charts. The black hole's gravitational field is fluctuating, and the ruins, they're emitting some kind of signal. It's faint, but it's there." Elena leaned forward, her eyes narrowing as she studied the data. "Play it." The signal crackled to life, a cold, mechanical voice filling the bridge. "Containment failure in 24 hours. All systems critical. Evacuate immediately." The words hung in the air, their implications sinking in. The countdown wasn't just a warning, it was a death knell. If the containment failed, the black hole would collapse, taking the entire network with it. And with it gone, the primordial shadow would break free, unleashing a force that could consume the galaxy. Marcus exhaled sharply, his usual sarcasm replaced by grim determination. Well, that's not ominous at all. So what's the plan? Do we try to stabilize this thing, or do we get the hell out of here before it blows? Elena's gaze remained fixed on the black hole, her mind racing. We can't leave. If the containment fails, it's not just this anomaly that's at risk. It's the entire network. The Watchers built this system to hold back the primordial shadow, and if it collapses, there's no telling what will happen. Priya adjusted the sensors, her brow furrowed in concentration. The signal is coming from one of the ruins. It's faint, but it's repeating. If we can trace it back to its source, we might be able to find a way to stabilize the containment. Elena nodded, her resolve hardening. Then that's where we start. Marcus, get us as close as you can without getting caught in the black hole's pull. Priya, keep analyzing that signal. We need to know exactly what we're dealing with. The Ether moved cautiously, its thrusters humming softly as it navigated the treacherous orbit around the black hole. The ruins loomed larger with each passing moment, their jagged forms casting long shadows across the ship's hull. The crew worked in tense silence, their movements precise but tinged with unease. The countdown was a constant reminder of the stakes, its cold, mechanical voice echoing in their minds. As the ship approached the source of the signal, the ruins came into sharper focus. The structure was massive, its surface covered in the same geometric patterns they had seen before. But there was something else, a faint, rhythmic pulse, like a heartbeat, emanating from deep within. The signal grew stronger, more insistent, as if it were calling to them. Elena's voice broke the silence. There, that's where the signal is coming from. Marcus, bring us in closer. The ship edged toward the structure, its thrusters straining against the black hole's pull. The crew prepared to board, their movements swift but deliberate. The countdown continued, its voice a constant reminder of the urgency of their mission. But as they approached the structure, one question lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. What waited for them inside? The answer, whatever it was, would determine the fate of the network and the universe itself. The Aether docked with the structure, its airlock hissing open to reveal a dimly lit interior. The crew stepped inside, their footsteps echoing softly against the metallic floor. The air was thick, almost tangible, as if the structure itself were alive. The signal grew louder, its rhythmic pulse resonating through the walls. Alina led the way, her hand hovering over the controls of her environmental suit. Stay close. We don't know what's waiting for us in here. The structure's interior was a maze of corridors and chambers, their walls lined with the same glowing patterns they had seen before. The crew moved cautiously, their senses heightened by the eerie silence. The signal led them deeper into the structure, its pulse growing stronger with each step. Finally, they reached a massive chamber, its walls covered in intricate carvings that seemed to shift and twist as if alive. At the center of the chamber was a pedestal, identical to the ones they had encountered before. But this one was different. Its surface glowed faintly, its geometric patterns pulsing in rhythm with the signal. Alina stepped forward, her heart pounding as she placed her hand on the pedestal. The light flared, and the chamber dissolved into a swirl of images, visions of the Watchers, of the anomalies, of the primordial shadow. And as the visions overwhelmed her, one thought echoed in her mind. The countdown had begun, and there was no turning back. The ruins loomed around them, their jagged edges cutting stark silhouettes against the faint glow of the black hole's event horizon. The air inside the structure was thick, almost suffocating, as if the weight of centuries pressed down on the team. Alina moved forward, her boots echoing softly against the metallic floor, each step carrying them deeper into the heart of the ancient alien construct. The control panel they sought wasn't hard to find. It stood at the center of a vast chamber, its surface etched with the same geometric patterns they'd seen before. But this time, the patterns pulsed with a faint, rhythmic light, as if the panel itself were alive, waiting for them. Priya was the first to approach the panel, her handheld scanner flickering as she analyzed its structure. "It's a stabilization system," she said, her voice tinged with both awe and unease. "But it's not just a machine, it's connected to the anomaly. To stabilize it, someone has to merge with the dark matter entity. They'd become its anchor, a living conduit to maintain the balance." Marcus let out a low whistle, his usual sarcasm replaced by a grim seriousness. "So, let me get this straight. To save the universe, one of us has to become one with the cosmic boogeyman. That's not exactly a fair trade." Alina's gaze remained fixed on the panel, her mind racing. The idea of merging with the dark matter entity was beyond anything they'd faced before. It wasn't just a physical sacrifice, it was a spiritual one, a surrender of self to something incomprehensible. The Watchers had built this system as a last resort, a way to contain the primordial shadow when all else failed, but the cost was unimaginable. "The logs mention this," Priya continued, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "The anchor becomes part of the anomaly, bound to it for eternity. They'd maintain the balance, but they'd also be consumed. Their consciousness would merge with the entity, their identity lost." The weight of the revelation settled over the team like a heavy blanket. The room seemed to grow colder, the faint hum of the panel the only sound breaking the silence. Alina stepped closer, her hand hovering over the glowing patterns. "If we don't do this, the anomaly collapses. The primordial shadow breaks free. Billions, no, trillions of lives are at stake. We can't just walk away." Marcus crossed his arms, his expression conflicted. "Yeah, but at what cost? Becoming some kind of cosmic battery. That's not exactly a happy ending." Priya's voice was soft but firm. "It's not about a happy ending, it's about survival." The Watchers knew this was the only way. They built this system knowing someone would have to make this choice. "And now, it's us." Alina's mind raced as she considered the implications. The idea of sacrificing herself was terrifying, but the alternative was unthinkable. She thought of the visions she'd seen in the void, of the countless lives that would be lost if the anomaly failed. She thought of her team, of the trust they'd placed in her to lead them through this. And she thought of the Watchers, their warnings echoing in her mind. "The truth will consume you. I'll do it," she said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "I'll become the anchor." The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. Marcus and Priya stared at her, their expressions a mix of shock and disbelief. "Alina, you can't," Marcus began, but she cut him off. "I have to. This isn't just about us. It's about everyone, every star, every planet, every life out there. If I don't do this, there won't be anything left to save." Priya's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "We'll help you. Whatever happens, we'll be with you." The panel's glow intensified as Alina placed her hand on its surface, the geometric patterns flaring to life. The air around her seemed to thicken, the faint hum growing louder, more insistent. She closed her eyes, her breath coming in short, sharp bursts as the energy surged through her. The last thing she saw before the light consumed her was the faces of her team, their expressions a mix of fear and determination. Then, there was only darkness. And within it, a presence ancient, vast, and incomprehensible, the dark matter entity. It reached out, its touch cold and alien, and Alina felt herself being pulled into its depths. Her consciousness began to unravel, her thoughts fragmenting as she merged with the entity. The last coherent thought she had was a single, desperate hope that her sacrifice would be enough. The team watched in stunned silence as the light faded, the panel's glow returning to its faint, rhythmic pulse. Alina was gone, her presence replaced by a faint, almost imperceptible hum. The Anomaly's energy signature stabilized, its erratic pulses calming into a steady rhythm. The countdown stopped. Priya wiped her eyes, her voice trembling. It worked, the Anomaly's stable. Marcus stared at the panel, his usual sarcasm replaced by a rare vulnerability. Yeah, but at what cost? The chamber fell silent, the weight of their victory pressing heavily on them. The Anomaly was contained, the primordial shadow held at bay, but the cost had been unimaginable. Alina had become the anchor, her consciousness merged with the dark matter entity, her identity lost to the void. And as the team prepared to leave the ruins, one question lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. Had her sacrifice been worth it? The answer, whatever it was, would haunt them forever. The chamber felt heavy with tension, the faint hum of the panel, the only sound breaking the silence. Alina stood before the glowing control interface, her hand hovering over the pulsating patterns. The weight of the moment pressed down on her, the realization of what she was about to do settling like a stone in her chest. Behind her, Marcus stepped forward, his usual bravado stripped away, leaving raw determination in its place. "Alina," he said, his voice steady but laced with urgency. "Let me do it. I've got nothing left to lose. You've got a team to lead, a mission to finish." This is my call." Alina turned to him, her expression unyielding. "Marcus, this isn't about having something to lose. It's about responsibility. I brought us here. I led us into this. If anyone's going to carry this burden, it's me." Marcus shook his head, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "You're not hearing me. This isn't just some noble sacrifice play. I've been running from my past for years, always the guy who cracks jokes, who stays on the surface. But this is something real, something that matters. Let me do it." Priya stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. "Marcus, this isn't about fixing the past. It's about protecting the future. Alina's right, this has to be her choice. But that doesn't mean you're not part of this. We're a team. We're in this together." Alina's gaze softened as she looked at Marcus, her tone gentle but resolute. "You've already given so much. This isn't about being expendable. It's about making the choice that only I can make. This is my responsibility, my burden to carry." Marcus opened his mouth to protest, but the words caught in his throat. He could see it in her eyes, the unwavering resolve, the quiet acceptance of what had to be done. He clenched his fists, the frustration and helplessness warring within him. Finally, he nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just, don't make me regret letting you do this." Alina turned back to the panel, her hand trembling slightly as she placed it on the glowing surface. The patterns flared to life, the hum growing louder, more insistent. The air around her seemed to thicken, the faint light of the chamber dimming as the energy surged through her. She closed her eyes, her breath coming in short, sharp bursts as the darkness closed in. The last thing she heard was Priya's voice, choked with emotion. "We'll make sure it wasn't for nothing." Then there was only silence. The panel's glow faded, the chamber returning to its dim, eerie light. Alina was gone, her presence replaced by a faint, almost imperceptible hum. The Anomaly's energy signature stabilized, its erratic pulses calming into a steady rhythm. The countdown stopped. Marcus stared at the panel, his usual sarcasm replaced by a rare vulnerability. She did it. The Anomaly's stable. Priya wiped her eyes, her voice trembling. Yeah, but at what cost? The chamber fell silent, the weight of their victory pressing heavily on them. The Anomaly was contained, the primordial shadow held at bay. But the cost had been unimaginable. Alina had become the anchor, her consciousness merged with the dark matter entity, her identity lost to the void. And as the team prepared to leave the ruins, one question lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. Had her sacrifice been worth it? The answer, whatever it was, would haunt them forever. As Alina's consciousness merged with the dark matter entity, the world around her dissolved into a swirling void of light and shadow. Sensations overwhelmed her, not of physical touch, but of thoughts, memories, and emotions that were not her own. It was as if she had stepped into a river of time, carried by currents that stretched back eons. The entity's memories unfolded before her, each one a fragment of a story older than the stars themselves. The first memory was vivid and jarring. She saw the Watchers in their prime, their towering forms radiant with power, standing atop a world of impossible beauty. Their cities shimmered with a golden light, their technology blending seamlessly with the fabric of reality. But beneath their utopia lay a hidden truth, a discovery that would change everything. They had found a force, ancient and malevolent, lurking in the dark spaces between galaxies. It was not a being, not in the way they understood life, but a presence, a force of pure entropy that sought to consume, to rewrite reality itself. They called it the primordial shadow. Alina felt the Watchers' fear, their desperation, as they realized the magnitude of what they had uncovered. The primordial shadow was not bound by the laws of physics or time. It fed on order, turning it into chaos, and its hunger was endless. The Watchers knew they could not destroy it, for it was as much a part of the universe as the stars themselves. So, they did the only thing they could. They imprisoned it. The next memory was one of creation. Alina watched as the Watchers forged the Anomalies, vast constructs of dark matter and energy designed to trap the primordial shadow. Each anomaly was a lock, its intricate mechanisms holding back a piece of the shadow's power, and at the heart of it all was the source, a black hole, its immense gravity serving as the anchor for the entire network. The Watchers poured their knowledge, their technology, and even their essence into the system, binding themselves to it as its eternal guardians, but the cost was immense. Alina felt the Watchers' sorrow as they sacrificed their immortality, their freedom, to become the jailers of the primordial shadow. They knew they could never return to their former glory, that their purpose was now singular, to ensure the shadow remained imprisoned, no matter the cost. And yet, even their sacrifices were not enough. Over time, the Anomalies began to fail, their energy signatures growing erratic as the shadow's influence seeped through the cracks. Alina's understanding deepened as the memories continued to unfold. The Watchers had not built the Anomalies purely out of altruism. They had also left behind a warning, a message for any civilization that might one day stumble upon their creation. The truth, they believed, was too dangerous to be known. The primordial shadow was not just a threat, it was a temptation. Its power, its ability to rewrite reality, was alluring, even to those who sought to destroy it. And so, the Watchers had hidden the truth, burying it behind layers of mystery and danger, ensuring that only the most determined or the most desperate would ever uncover it. As the memories faded, Alina felt a profound sense of connection, to the dark matter entity. It was not just a force of nature, it was a living, breathing part of the Watcher's legacy. And now, as its anchor, she had become a part of that legacy too. The weight of it pressed down on her, not as a burden, but as a responsibility. The anomalies were failing, the primordial shadow was stirring, and the Watcher's sacrifices were on the verge of being undone. But there was still hope. The system was not beyond repair. Not yet. Alina's consciousness lingered in the void, her thoughts a swirling mix of fear and determination. She had seen the truth, felt the Watcher's resolve, and understood the stakes. The anomalies were not just locks. They were a line of defense, a safeguard against the end of everything. And now, bound to the entity, she was the key to keeping that defense intact. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope. The Watchers had given their all to protect the universe, and now, so would she. The Aether shuddered violently as a blinding flash of light erupted from the anomaly, the Watcher ships emerging from the swirling darkness like predators stalking their prey. Their angular hulls gleamed faintly, their glowing patterns pulsing with a cold, mechanical precision. The crew barely had time to react before the first barrage struck, the ship's shields flickering under the assault. Evasive maneuvers, Alina shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Marcus's hands flew over the controls, the ship lurching sharply to the side as another energy pulse narrowly missed the hull. The bridge was alive with activity, alarms blaring and consoles flashing red as the crew scrambled to respond. Priya's voice was sharp with urgency. The Watchers are targeting the anomaly. They are trying to destabilize it further. If they break through, the countdown will accelerate. Alina's mind raced as she clung to the console, her body trembling under the strain of maintaining the connection to the dark matter entity. The entity's power surged through her, a torrent of energy that threatened to overwhelm her senses. Her vision blurred, the world around her dissolving into a chaotic swirl of light and shadow. She could feel the anomaly's instability, its erratic pulses growing stronger, more erratic, as the Watchers pressed their attack. We need to buy her time. Marcus barked, his tone uncharacteristically serious. He fired the ship's thrusters, maneuvering the Aether into a defensive position between the anomaly and the Watcher ships. The ship's weapons systems came online, their targeting arrays locking onto the nearest threat. Priya, keep the shields up. I'll handle the offense. The Aether's turrets roared to life, their energy blasts streaking through the void to strike the Watcher ships. The impact sent shockwaves rippling through the anomaly's energy field, the black hole's event horizon flickering faintly. The Watcher ships retaliated with precision, their attacks coordinated and relentless. The Aether's shields strained under the onslaught, their energy reserves depleting rapidly. Elena gritted her teeth, her hands gripping the console as she fought to maintain the connection. The dark matter entity's power was overwhelming, its presence a constant, oppressive weight in her mind. She could feel it pulling at her, trying to consume her, to erase her identity and merge her completely with its essence. Her thoughts fragmented, memories and sensations swirling together in a chaotic storm. She saw flashes of the Watchers, their towering forms glowing faintly as they built the anomalies. She felt their sorrow, their determination, their fear. And she felt the primordial shadow, its presence cold and malevolent, stirring restlessly within the network. Alina, Priya's voice, cut through the haze, sharp and urgent. You're losing focus. If you don't stabilize the anomaly, the countdown will. I know, Alina snapped, her voice strained but resolute. She forced herself to concentrate, to push back against the entity's influence. Her mind felt like it was tearing apart, her thoughts scattering like leaves in a storm, but she couldn't give up. Not now, not when the stakes were so high. With a surge of willpower, she forced the entity's energy into a steady rhythm, channeling it into the Anomaly's core. The black hole's event horizon flickered, its erratic pulses slowing as the energy field stabilized. The countdown's voice echoed faintly in the background, its tone shifting from urgent to steady. Containment stabilizing. Countdown paused. Marcus let out a triumphant shout as the Watcher ships began to retreat, their glowing patterns dimming as they disappeared into the void. "We did it, they're pulling back." Priya exhaled sharply, her hands trembling as she adjusted the ship's systems. For now, but the Anomaly's still unstable. "If the Watchers come back, they will," Elena interrupted, her voice weak but steady. She slumped against the console, her body trembling with exhaustion. "They'll keep coming. They're programmed to protect the network at all costs, and if they think we're a threat." Her voice trailed off as another wave of dizziness washed over her. The entity's power was still coursing through her, its presence a constant, oppressive weight in her mind. She could feel it pulling at her, trying to consume her, to erase her identity, and merge her completely with its essence. But she couldn't let it win, not yet. The crew fell silent, the weight of their victory tempered by the knowledge of what lay ahead. The Anomaly was stable, for now. But the Watchers were still out there, and the primordial shadow was still stirring. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot, and as the ether drifted in the shadow of the black hole, one question lingered in the air. How much longer could they hold out? The Aether's engines hummed softly as the crew regrouped in the central lab, the tension in the air thick enough to cut with a knife. The Anomaly outside loomed like a silent sentinel, its pulsating energy casting an eerie glow across the ship's interior. Priya sat hunched over the alien control panel, her handheld scanner whirring faintly as she worked to decode the final fragments of the Watcher's message. The symbols on the panel shifted and flickered, their patterns growing clearer with each passing moment. Elena watched from a distance, her connection to the dark matter entity still a faint, oppressive weight in her mind, while Marcus paced nervously, his usual sarcasm replaced by a rare intensity. "Got it," Priya said suddenly, her voice cutting through the silence. The crew turned to her, their expressions a mix of hope and apprehension. She straightened, her eyes scanning the holographic display as the final symbols resolved into a coherent message. "It's a warning and a solution. The anomalies can only be fully contained by destroying the source. But if we do that..." She hesitated, her voice trailing off as she processed the implications. "But if we do that, what?" Marcus prompted, his tone sharp with impatience. Priya took a deep breath, her expression grim. "If we destroy the source, it will erase all knowledge of the forbidden truth. The anomalies, the Watchers, the primordial shadow, all of it will be lost. No one will ever know what happened here. No one will remember the sacrifices that were made." The words hung in the air, their weight pressing down on the crew like a physical force. Alina stepped forward, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her mind. "So, we have a choice. We can destroy the source and save the universe, but at the cost of forgetting everything. Or we can let the anomalies fail and risk the primordial shadow breaking free." Marcus let out a low whistle, his usual bravado stripped away. "That's not exactly a fair trade. We'd be saving the universe, but at the cost of everything we fought for." "Everything we've learned." Priya nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It's not just about us. The Watchers knew this would happen. They knew that the truth was too dangerous to be known. That's why they built the system the way they did. They wanted to make sure that if the anomalies ever failed, the truth would be erased along with them." Alina's mind raced as she considered the implications. The truth was a double-edged sword, a source of knowledge and a potential weapon. The Watchers had sacrificed everything to keep it hidden, to ensure that no one could ever misuse it. But now, the choice was in their hands. To destroy the source would mean losing everything they had fought for, everything they had learned. But to let the anomalies fail would mean unleashing a force that could consume the universe. "We don't have a choice," Alina said finally, her voice firm despite the fear gnawing at her. "We can't risk the primordial shadow breaking free. If we destroy the source, we lose the truth. But if we don't, we lose everything." Priya's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she nodded, her resolve hardening. "Then we do it. We destroy the source. But we have to act fast. The anomalies are failing faster than we anticipated. If we wait too long, it won't matter what we choose." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of the decision pressing heavily on them. The anomaly outside pulsed faintly, its energy signature growing more erratic with each passing moment. The countdown had paused, but it was only a matter of time before it resumed. And when it did, there would be no turning back. As the crew prepared to carry out their final mission, one question lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. What would the universe look like without the truth? The answer, whatever it was, would change everything. And as the Aether hurtled toward the source, one thing was clear: they were running out of time. The Aether's central lab was silent, save for the faint hum of the ship's systems and the rhythmic pulse of the anomaly outside. The crew stood around the holographic display, the weight of their decision pressing heavily on them. The final fragment of the Watcher's message glowed faintly on the screen, its implications clear. Destroying the source would erase all knowledge of the anomalies, the Watchers, and the primordial shadow. It was a choice between saving the universe and preserving the truth, a truth that had cost so much to uncover. Marcus was the first to break the silence, his voice sharp with frustration. "We can't just erase this knowledge. It's part of who we are, everything we've fought for, everything we've learned. It's not just some cosmic secret. It's history. It's our history. If we destroy the source, it's like we never existed, like none of this ever happened." Alina turned to him, her expression resolute but tinged with sorrow. "Some truths are too dangerous to know, Marcus. The Watchers knew that. They built this system to protect the universe, not just from the primordial shadow, but from the temptation of its power. If we let this knowledge survive, someone else will find it. Someone else will try to unlock it. And when they do, they'll make the same mistakes we did." Priya stepped forward, her voice calm but urgent. "Alina's right. The Watchers didn't just build the anomalies to contain the primordial shadow. They built them to contain the truth. They knew that knowledge is power, and power corrupts. If we let this survive, it's only a matter of time before someone tries to use it. And when they do, the consequences will be catastrophic." Marcus shook his head, his frustration boiling over. "So what? We just wipe the slate clean, pretend none of this ever happened? That's not justice. That's not even survival. It's cowardice." Alina's gaze softened, her tone gentle but firm. "It's not about cowardice, Marcus. It's about responsibility. The Watchers sacrificed everything to keep this truth hidden. They knew it was too dangerous to be known, and now we have to make the same choice. We have to let it go." The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over them like a heavy blanket. Marcus clenched his fists, his usual bravado stripped away, leaving raw emotion in its place. "And what about us? What about what we've been through? What about Alina? She's still connected to that thing. If we destroy the source, what happens to her?" Priya's voice was soft but steady. If we destroy the source, the anomalies will collapse. The primordial shadow will be erased, and Alina, she'll be free. But she'll also be gone, her consciousness, her identity. It's tied to the entity. If the entity is destroyed, so is she. Alina's gaze didn't waver. I made my choice a long time ago. If this is the price, then I'll pay it, but we can't let fear stop us. The universe is counting on us. We have to do this. Marcus stared at her, his expression a mix of anger and despair. You're asking us to let you go, to erase everything we fought for. How is that fair? Alina stepped closer, her voice steady but laced with emotion. It's not about fairness, Marcus. It's about survival. The Watchers knew that. They sacrificed everything to protect the universe, and now we have to do the same. The crew fell silent, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on them. The anomaly outside pulsed faintly, its energy signature growing more erratic with each passing moment. The countdown had paused, but it was only a matter of time before it resumed, and when it did, there would be no turning back. As the crew prepared to carry out their final mission, one question lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. What would the universe look like without the truth? The answer, whatever it was, would change everything. And as the Aether hurtled toward the source, one thing was clear: they were running out of time. The Aether's central lab was a storm of activity, the crew working frantically to prepare for the final act. Alina stood before the alien control panel, her hand hovering over the glowing symbols that would initiate the self-destruct sequence. The weight of the moment pressed down on her, the enormity of what she was about to do settling like a stone in her chest. Destroying the source would erase the anomalies, the primordial shadow, and the forbidden truth, but it would also erase her. Her consciousness, bound to the dark matter entity, would be lost forever. She took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. The universe was worth the sacrifice. As her fingers brushed the panel, the air around her seemed to shift, the faint hum of the ship's systems replaced by an oppressive silence. The symbols on the panel flared to life, their patterns shifting and twisting as if alive. Alina's vision blurred, the world around her dissolving into a swirl of light and shadow. She felt a presence ancient, vast, and incomprehensible. The Watchers. The bridge of the Aether dissolved, replaced by a vast, empty expanse. Before her stood a towering figure, its form glowing faintly with geometric patterns that pulsed in rhythm with the anomaly's energy. The Watcher's voice echoed in her mind, deep and resonant, bypassing her ears entirely. You would destroy the source, erase the truth, and sacrifice yourself. But there is another way. Alina's heart pounded as she stared at the Watcher, her mind racing. Another way? What are you talking about? The Watcher's glowing patterns shifted, its voice cold and deliberate. We will spare humanity. We will ensure the primordial shadow remains imprisoned, the anomalies stable, but in return, you must become our prisoner. You will remain bound to the entity, ensuring the truth remains hidden forever. No one will ever know what happened here. No one will ever know the sacrifices that were made. The offer hung in the air, its implications sinking in. Alina's thoughts swirled, a chaotic storm of fear, hope, and uncertainty. If she agreed, the universe would be safe, but at the cost of her freedom, her identity, her very existence. She would become a living lock, bound to the entity for eternity, her consciousness merged with its essence. The truth would be preserved, but hidden, buried so deep that no one would ever uncover it. Priya's voice broke through the silence, sharp with urgency. Alina, don't do it. There has to be another way. We can't let them take you. Marcus stepped forward, his usual sarcasm replaced by raw emotion. Yeah, no offense, But this deal sounds like a cosmic scam. You give up everything, and they get to keep their secrets. No way. Alina turned to them, her expression resolute but tinged with sorrow. If I don't agree, the anomalies will fail. The primordial shadow will break free. Billions, no, trillions, of lives are at stake. I can't let that happen. Priya's eyes glistened with unshed tears, her voice trembling. But what about you? What about your life? We've already lost so much. We can't lose you too. Alina's gaze softened, her tone gentle but firm. This isn't just about me. It's about everyone, every star, every planet, every life out there. If I can save them, then it's worth it. The Watcher's voice echoed again, its tone cold and final. The choice is yours. Destroy the source and erase the truth, or become our prisoner and ensure it remains hidden. Decide. The crew fell silent, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on them. Alina's mind raced as she considered the options. Destroying the source would save the universe, but at the cost of everything they had fought for. Becoming the Watcher's prisoner would preserve the truth, but at the cost of her freedom. Both choices came with unimaginable consequences. Finally, Alina straightened, her resolve hardening. I'll do it. I'll become your prisoner, but you have to promise me one thing. You'll protect the universe. You'll keep the primordial shadow imprisoned, no matter what. The Watcher's glowing patterns flared brighter, its voice echoing with finality. We will uphold our end of the bargain, but know this, once you agree, there is no turning back. You will be bound to the entity for eternity. The truth will remain hidden, and your existence will be forgotten. Alina nodded, her heart pounding as she made her choice. Then it's done. The Watcher's form shimmered, its glowing patterns fading as the vision dissolved. The bridge of the aether reappeared around her, the crew staring at her in stunned silence. Alina's connection to the entity flared, its presence a constant, oppressive weight in her mind. She could feel it pulling at her, trying to consume her, to erase her identity, and merge her completely with its essence. As the crew prepared to leave the ruins, one question lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. Had they truly saved the universe, or had they merely delayed the inevitable? The answer, whatever it was, would haunt them forever, and as the ether disappeared into the void, one thing was clear: the fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. The aether's bridge fell silent as Alina's decision echoed through the room, her voice steady but heavy with finality. She had chosen to bind herself to the dark matter entity, to become the Watcher's prisoner, ensuring the anomalies remained stable and the primordial shadow imprisoned. The crew stared at her, their expressions a mix of disbelief, sorrow, and reluctant acceptance. They had come so far, fought so hard, and now the cost of their victory was laid bare. Alina's freedom, her identity, her very existence. The alien control panel flared to life, its geometric patterns pulsing in rhythm with the anomaly's energy. Alina's hand trembled as she placed it on the glowing surface, her connection to the entity flaring with intensity. The air around her seemed to thicken, the faint hum of the ship's systems replaced by an oppressive silence. Her vision blurred, the world dissolving into a swirl of light and shadow as the Watcher's presence enveloped her. She felt their power, their ancient, incomprehensible will, binding her to the entity, merging her consciousness with its essence. The last coherent thought she had was a single, desperate hope that her sacrifice would be enough. The crew watched in stunned silence as the anomaly outside began to collapse, its swirling mass of darkness shrinking rapidly, its energy signature stabilizing. The black hole at its core pulsed faintly, its event horizon flickering as the anomalies across the network fell into alignment. The countdown's voice echoed faintly in the background, its tone shifting from urgent to steady. Containment stabilized, countdown paused, but the victory was bittersweet. Alina was gone, her presence replaced by a faint, almost imperceptible hum. The Watcher's offer had come at a cost, one that would haunt the crew forever. Priya wiped her eyes, her voice trembling. She did it. The anomalies are stable. The primordial shadow is contained. Marcus clenched his fists, his usual sarcasm stripped away, leaving raw emotion in its place. Yeah, but at what cost? She gave up everything, her freedom, her identity, everything, and now she's just gone. The eighth had drifted in silence, the crew grappling with the enormity of what had just happened. The anomaly outside continued to pulse, its energy signature steady but faint, a reminder of the sacrifices that had been made. The Watcher's words echoed in their minds, a haunting refrain. The truth will remain hidden, and your existence will be forgotten. As the crew prepared to leave the ruins, one question lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. Had they truly saved the universe, or had they merely delayed the inevitable? The answer, whatever it was, would haunt them forever. And as the ether disappeared into the void, one thing was clear: the fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. The ether descended through Earth's atmosphere, its sleek hull reflecting the golden hues of the setting sun. Below, crowds had gathered, their faces a blur of celebration and awe. The crew had been hailed as heroes, their mission to stabilize the anomalies and contain the primordial shadow, a triumph of human ingenuity and courage. But as the ship touched down, the weight of their victory felt hollow. They had saved the universe, but at a cost that no one else could see. Alina. The hatch opened, and the crew stepped out into a cacophony of cheers and flashing lights. Reporters clamored for interviews, politicians praised their bravery, and scientists marveled at the technological breakthroughs they had achieved. Yet, amidst the fanfare, Marcus stood apart, his usual bravado replaced by a quiet, simmering determination. He had seen the truth, felt the weight of Alina's sacrifice, and he wasn't ready to let it go. As the days turned into weeks, the world moved on, content with the official narrative. The anomalies had been stabilized, the threat neutralized, and humanity was safe. But Marcus knew better. He had witnessed the Watcher's cold, calculated offer, the way they had bound Alina to the dark matter entity, erasing her identity to preserve their secrets. He had seen the flicker of hope in her eyes, even as she made the ultimate sacrifice, and he couldn't shake the feeling that there had to be another way, a way to free her, to bring her back. In the quiet of his workshop, surrounded by schematics and half-finished prototypes, Marcus pored over every scrap of data they had collected. The anomalies, the Watchers, the primordial shadow, it was all connected, a puzzle with pieces that didn't quite fit. But Marcus was a tinkerer at heart, a man who thrived on solving the unsolvable, and this was the greatest challenge of his life. Priya found him there one evening, hunched over a console, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. "You're not going to let this go, are you?" she asked, her voice soft but laced with concern. Marcus didn't look up. "Would you, if it were you out there, trapped in that thing, wouldn't you want someone to come for you?" Priya sighed, her analytical mind wrestling with the moral and practical implications. "Marcus, I get it. Alina is family, but the Watchers warned us. The truth is too dangerous. If we dig too deep, if we try to bring her back, we could destabilize the anomalies again. We could unleash the primordial shadow." Marcus finally turned to her, his expression a mix of frustration and desperation. "And what if we're wrong? What if the Watchers lied? What if there's a way to free her without risking everything?" "We owe it to her to try." Priya hesitated, torn between her loyalty to the crew and her fear of the unknown. She had always been the voice of reason, the one who weighed the risks and made the hard decisions. But this time, the stakes were personal. Alina had been their leader, their anchor, and her absence left a void that no amount of celebration could fill. "All right," Priya said finally, her voice firm. "But we do this carefully. No reckless moves, no half-baked plans. We analyze every possibility, every risk. And if we find a way, we make sure it doesn't come at the cost of everything else." Marcus nodded, a flicker of hope breaking through his exhaustion. "Deal, but we can't do this alone. We'll need help, people who understand the anomalies, the watchers, the dark matter entity. People who aren't afraid to challenge the status quo." As the crew prepared to embark on their new mission, the weight of their decision pressed heavily on them. The world saw them as heroes, but they knew the truth. Their fight wasn't over. Elena's sacrifice had saved the universe, but it had also left a question hanging in the air. A question that Marcus was determined to answer. Was there a way to free her? And if so, what would it cost? The Aether remained grounded, its engines silent, but the crew's resolve burned brighter than ever. They had faced the unknown before, stared into the void, and emerged victorious. But this time, the stakes were personal, and as Marcus and Priya set their sights on the next chapter of their journey, one thing was clear. They were willing to risk it all to bring Alina home. Years had passed since the Aether returned to Earth, its crew hailed as heroes for their role in stabilizing the anomalies and containing the primordial shadow. The world had moved on, content with the official narrative, but Marcus had not. While the rest of humanity celebrated its newfound safety, he remained haunted by Alina's sacrifice, her consciousness bound to the dark matter entity, her identity erased to preserve the forbidden truth. He spent countless nights in his workshop, poring over the alien data they had collected, searching for answers that no one else dared to seek. Then, one evening, it happened. While analyzing a fragment of the Watcher's logs, a piece of data that had previously seemed indecipherable, Marcus noticed a pattern. The symbols, when arranged in a specific sequence, revealed a hidden message. His heart raced as he translated the words. The anchor is not lost. It endures, bound but unbroken. The implications were staggering. Alina's consciousness wasn't erased. It was still there, trapped within the entity, waiting to be freed. Priya found him late that night, his workspace cluttered with holographic projections and hastily scrawled notes. "Marcus, are you still at it?" she asked, her voice tinged with concern. But as she stepped closer, she saw the fire in his eyes, the kind of determination that could only mean one thing. He had found something. "She's still alive," Marcus said, his voice trembling with a mix of excitement and disbelief. "Her consciousness, it's still there. The Watchers didn't erase her, they preserved her. She's the anchor, keeping the anomalies stable, but she's not gone. We can bring her back." Priya's analytical mind immediately began to process the implications. If that's true, then the Watchers left this message for a reason. They wanted someone to find her, to know that she's still there. But why? Why leave a clue like this if they wanted the truth to remain hidden? Marcus shook his head, his frustration evident. "I don't know. Maybe they had doubts about what they did. Maybe they realized that binding someone to the entity forever was too cruel, even for them. Or maybe they wanted to make sure that if someone ever figured it out, they'd have the chance to fix it. The discovery changed everything. What had once seemed like an impossible sacrifice now felt like a puzzle waiting to be solved. But the stakes were higher than ever. If they tried to free Alina, they risked destabilizing the anomalies and unleashing the primordial shadow. The Watcher's warning still loomed large. The truth was dangerous, and meddling with it could lead to catastrophic consequences. Yet, Marcus couldn't let it go. He had spent years grappling with the guilt of leaving Alina behind, of accepting a victory that felt hollow without her. Now, with this new revelation, he saw a way to make things right, but it would require more than just determination. It would require a plan, resources, and a crew willing to risk everything. Priya, ever the pragmatist, began to outline the challenges. Even if we can locate her consciousness within the entity, we'll need a way to extract it without disrupting the anomalies. And we'll have to bypass the Watcher's safeguards. This isn't just a rescue mission, it's a heist, and we're breaking into the most secure prison in the universe. Marcus nodded, his resolve hardening. Then we'll need help, people who understand the anomalies, the Watchers, and the dark matter entity. People who aren't afraid to challenge the impossible. As they began to assemble their team, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into uncharted territory. The Watchers had built the anomalies to contain the primordial shadow, but they had also left behind a hidden message, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. And now, with that glimmer guiding them, Marcus and Priya set their sights on the next chapter of their journey, a mission to bring Alina home. The Aether remained grounded, its engines silent, but Marcus knew it wouldn't stay that way for long. The fight wasn't over, not for him, not for Alina, and not for the countless others who had sacrificed everything to protect the universe. And as he stared at the holographic projection of the hidden message, one thought echoed in his mind: we're coming for you. The Aether hung in Earth's orbit, its sleek hull gleaming under the pale light of the moon. Inside, Marcus paced the bridge, his mind racing with plans and possibilities. The discovery of the Watcher's hidden message had ignited a fire in him, a determination to rescue Alina that burned brighter than ever. But this wasn't a mission he could undertake alone. He needed a crew, people who could navigate the dangers of the unknown, who understood the anomalies, and who weren't afraid to challenge the impossible. And he needed them fast. Priya was the first to join him. She had always been the voice of reason, the one who weighed risks and made calculated decisions. But this time, her resolve matched his. "If there's even a chance we can bring her back," she said, her voice steady but tinged with emotion, "we have to take it. Alina gave everything for us. It's our turn to fight for her." Next came Dr. Kyan Malik, a brilliant astrophysicist who had spent years studying the anomalies from afar. His expertise in dark matter and gravitational physics was unparalleled, and his quiet, methodical approach balanced Marcus's fiery determination. "The anomalies aren't just scientific curiosities," Kyan said as he boarded the ship, his eyes alight with curiosity. "They're a puzzle, and I've spent my life trying to solve it. If there's a way to free Alina, I'll find it." Rounding out the crew was Elena Voss, a former pilot with nerves of steel and a knack for getting out of tight situations. She had been part of the original mission to the source anomaly, and her first-hand experience made her an invaluable asset. "I've seen what the anomalies can do," she said, her tone grim but resolute. "If we're going back out there, we're going to need someone who knows how to navigate the madness." With the crew assembled, Marcus wasted no time. The Aether's engines roared to life, its thrusters propelling the ship away from Earth and into the void. Their destination, the edge of the galaxy, where the Watcher's influence was weakest. It was a gamble, but one they had to take. The Watchers had bound Alina to the dark matter entity, anchoring her consciousness to stabilize the anomalies. But if they could find the remnants of the source anomaly, the heart of the network, they might be able to sever that connection without destabilizing the entire system. The journey was long and fraught with tension. The edge of the galaxy was a place of mystery and danger, a region where the rules of physics seemed to bend and warp. The crew worked tirelessly, their days filled with analysis and preparation. Kyan pored over the data, searching for patterns in the Anomalies' energy signatures. Priya coordinated their efforts, her calm demeanor a steadying presence. Zara kept the ship on course, her sharp instincts guiding them through the treacherous expanse of space. As they approached their destination, the Aether's sensors picked up faint energy readings, echoes of the source Anomaly's collapse. The remnants were scattered, their energy signatures weak but unmistakable. "This is it," Marcus said, his voice low with anticipation. "This is where we find her." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on them. They were stepping into uncharted territory, venturing into a place where the Watcher's control was tenuous at best, but they had come too far to turn back now. The fight wasn't over, not for them, and not for Alina. As the Aether descended into the remnants of the source Anomaly, one question lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. Would they find Alina, or would the Watcher's safeguards prove too powerful to overcome? The answer, whatever it was, would change everything. And as the ship disappeared into the swirling darkness, one thing was clear: they were willing to risk it all to bring her home. The Aether drifted silently through the remnants of the source Anomaly, its sensors scanning the fractured energy signatures that pulsed faintly in the void. The crew was on edge, their movements deliberate but tinged with unease. This wasn't just a search, it was a race against time. Every passing moment brought them closer to Alina, but also closer to the Watcher's safeguards, which had already proven to be as formidable as they were enigmatic. As the ship navigated the swirling debris, a sudden surge of energy lit up the sensors. Priya's voice cut through the tension. "Something's out there. It's not part of the Anomaly's debris. It's moving, fast." Before anyone could react, a massive angular shape emerged from the darkness, its glowing geometric patterns unmistakable. A Watcher ship, but this one was different. Its patterns flickered erratically, its movements jagged and uncoordinated, as if it were damaged or rogue. The crew braced themselves, unsure of what to expect. The Watchers had been their adversaries, their jailers, but this one didn't seem to be following their usual protocols. The ship's comms crackled to life, and a voice, deep, resonant, yet strained, filled the bridge. "You should not be here. The truth is not for you." The words were familiar, but there was something different about the tone, something almost desperate. Marcus stepped forward, his usual sarcasm replaced by a rare intensity. "We're not here for your secrets. We're here for Alina. She's still alive, and we're going to bring her back." The Watcher's response was immediate, its voice sharp and urgent. "You do not understand. Her sacrifice destabilized the prison. The anchors were never meant to be broken. The malevolent force you call the primordial shadow is beginning to break free. If it escapes, the universe will fall." The words hit like a punch to the gut. Priya's hands flew over the console, pulling up the Anomaly's energy readings. "He's right," she said, her voice tight with alarm. "The Anomalies are destabilizing faster than we thought. The energy signatures are becoming erratic, like they're unraveling." Marcus clenched his fists, his frustration boiling over. "So what? We're just supposed to let her stay trapped? Let the universe fall apart because of some ancient cosmic fail-safe?" The Watcher's ship shifted, its glowing patterns dimming slightly as if weighed down by the gravity of its next words. "There is another way, but it is not without risk. To free the anchor, you must restore balance. The Anomalies must be stabilized, and the primordial shadow must be contained. But to do so, you will need to confront the truth, the forbidden knowledge that even we fear to wield. Kyan, who had been silent until now, stepped forward, his analytical mind already dissecting the implications. "You're saying we have to use the primordial shadow's power to stabilize the anomalies? That's insane. That's exactly what the Watchers were trying to prevent." The rogue Watcher's voice grew softer, almost pleading. "Desperate times call for desperate measures. The anchors are failing. The anomalies are collapsing. If you do not act, the primordial shadow will break free, and all will be lost. But if you succeed, you may yet save the universe and the anchor." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of the decision pressing heavily on them. The Watcher's offer was a gamble, a high-stakes play that could either save everything or doom it all. But as Marcus stared at the rogue Watcher's ship, a flicker of determination sparked within him. "We didn't come this far to give up. If there's a way to save Alina and the universe, we'll find it." Priya nodded, her resolve hardening. "But we'll need a plan. Using the primordial shadow's power isn't just dangerous, it's unpredictable. We'll need to isolate its energy, control it, and use it to reinforce the anomalies without letting it consume us." As the crew began to outline their next steps, the rogue Watcher's ship began to fade, its glowing patterns dimming as it retreated into the darkness. "The choice is yours," it said, its voice faint but resolute. "But choose wisely. The fate of the universe depends on it." The Aether hung in silence, the crew grappling with the enormity of what lay ahead. The anomalies were failing, the primordial shadow was stirring, and Alina's fate hung in the balance. But one thing was clear: they were no longer just fighting for Alina, they were fighting for the survival of everything. And as the ship adjusted its course, one question lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. Would their gamble pay off, or would it be the final nail in the universe's coffin? The Aether's bridge was alive with activity, the crew huddled around a holographic projection of the galaxy's edge. Marcus paced back and forth, his usual sarcasm replaced by a rare focus. "All right," he said, his voice cutting through the tension. "We've got a rogue Watcher pointing us toward a solution, but it's not going to be easy. If we're going to free Elena and stabilize the anomalies, we need to infiltrate the Watcher's stronghold. And from what we know, that's no walk in the park." Priya leaned over the console, her fingers tracing the faint energy signatures on the map. "The stronghold is hidden within a dark matter nebula," she said, her tone analytical but tinged with urgency. "It's not just a fortress, it's a labyrinth. The Watchers designed it to be impenetrable. Anyone who gets too close risks being swallowed by the nebula's gravitational distortions or detected by their defenses." Kyan, ever the pragmatist, chimed in. "The nebula's dark matter density is off the charts. It's going to scramble our sensors and make navigation nearly impossible. If we're going to get through, we'll need to recalibrate the ship's systems to handle the interference." Zara, seated at the helm, folded her arms and raised an eyebrow. "And let's not forget the Watcher's ships. If they catch us, we're not just dealing with a few warning shots. They'll obliterate us before we even get close." Marcus stopped pacing, his gaze fixed on the hologram. "So, we need a plan that gets us through the nebula, past the defenses, and into the stronghold without getting caught or torn apart by gravity." "Piece of cake, right?" Priya's lips curved into a faint smile, though her eyes remained serious. "It's not impossible. The rogue Watcher gave us a clue. The stronghold's defenses are tied to the nebula's energy fluctuations. If we can map those fluctuations, we might find a blind spot in their surveillance." Kyan nodded, his mind already turning over the possibilities. "We'll need to modify the ship's sensors to detect the nebula's energy patterns in real time. If we can predict the fluctuations, We can navigate through the safest routes. Zara leaned forward, her sharp instincts kicking in, and we'll need to move fast. The longer we're in the nebula, the higher the chance of being detected. We'll have to time our approach perfectly. Marcus clapped his hands together, his determination reignited. Then let's get to work. Kyan, you handle the sensor modifications. Priya, you map the energy fluctuations. Zara, you plot the course and get us in and out as fast as possible. And me, I'll make sure we don't blow ourselves up in the process. The crew sprang into action, their movements precise but tinged with urgency. The Aethys systems were recalibrated, its thrusters tuned for maximum speed and maneuverability. The dark matter nebula loomed ahead, its swirling mass of energy casting an eerie glow across the ship's hull. As they approached, the crew could feel the nebula's gravitational pull, its distortions warping the very fabric of space around them. Priya's voice broke the silence. Energy fluctuations are spiking. We're entering the nebula's outer layer. Stay sharp. The ship shuddered as it plunged into the nebula, its sensors flickering under the strain. The crew held their breath, their eyes fixed on the holographic map, as Priya's predictions guided them through the labyrinth of energy currents. The nebula was alive, its pulses and ripples creating a chaotic dance of light and shadow. But amidst the chaos, they found their path, a narrow corridor of stability that led straight to the Watcher's stronghold. As the Aether emerged from the nebula's inner layer, the stronghold came into view. It was a massive, angular structure, its surface etched with glowing geometric patterns that pulsed faintly in rhythm with the nebula's energy. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of their mission pressing heavily on them. They were about to infiltrate the Watcher's most secure fortress, a place designed to keep the truth hidden at all costs. Marcus straightened, his voice steady despite the tension. This is it. We're not just fighting for Alina and Amor, we're fighting for the universe. Let's make it count. The Aether descended toward the stronghold, its thrusters humming softly as the crew prepared for the most dangerous part of their mission. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning, and as the ship disappeared into the fortress's shadow, one thing was clear. They were willing to risk it all to bring Alina home and save the universe. The Aether descended into the heart of the Watcher's stronghold, its thrusters humming softly as the crew braced themselves for what lay ahead. The fortress was a labyrinth of towering halls and narrow corridors, its walls etched with glowing geometric patterns that pulsed faintly in the dim light. Every step deeper into the stronghold felt like a step closer to their goal and to unimaginable danger. The air was thick with tension, the faint hum of the walls a constant reminder that they were trespassing in a place never meant for human eyes. The first obstacle came almost immediately. As they moved through a narrow passage, the floor beneath them shifted, panels sliding open to reveal a series of glowing energy barriers. Priya's sharp eyes caught the faint shimmer of motion sensors embedded in the walls. Traps, she said, her voice low but urgent. They're designed to detect intruders and activate defenses. We'll need to move carefully. Marcus, ever the pragmatist, pulled out a small device from his toolkit. Careful's not really my style, he muttered, tossing the device toward the sensors. It emitted a low-frequency pulse, disrupting the energy barriers long enough for the crew to slip past. But the respite was short-lived. As they rounded the next corner, a pair of Watcher Guardians emerged from the shadows, their towering forms glowing faintly with the same geometric patterns as the walls. The Guardians moved with precision, their movements fluid yet mechanical, as if they were extensions of the stronghold itself. Zara raised her weapon, her sharp instincts kicking in. "Weapons hot," she shouted, firing a burst of energy at the nearest Guardian. The blast struck its chest, but the creature barely flinched, its glowing patterns flaring brighter as it advanced. Kyan, analyzing the Guardian's energy signatures, called out, "Their armor is tied to the Stronghold's power grid. We need to disrupt the connection." Marcus nodded, pulling out another device and tossing it toward the base of the nearest wall. The explosion that followed sent a surge of energy through the corridor, momentarily dimming the Guardian's glow. The crew seized the opportunity, their coordinated attacks finally bringing the Guardians down, but the Stronghold wasn't done with them. As they pressed forward, the walls seemed to shift, their glowing patterns forming new barriers and obstacles. Priya's analytical mind worked overtime, deciphering the patterns and guiding the crew through the maze. "The Stronghold is alive," she said, her voice tinged with awe. "It's reacting to us, trying to stop us." The deeper they went, the more intense the challenges became. Energy barriers, collapsing corridors, and more Guardians tested their resolve at every turn. Yet, with each obstacle overcome, the crew grew more determined. They were no longer just fighting for Alina, they were fighting for the universe itself. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they reached the central chamber. The room was vast, its walls lined with glowing symbols that pulsed faintly in rhythm with the Stronghold's energy. At the center of the chamber floated a massive, shimmering sphere, a containment field. Inside, faintly visible through the swirling energy, was Alina. Her form was ethereal, her consciousness bound to the dark matter entity that anchored the Anomalies. Marcus stepped forward, his usual sarcasm replaced by a rare intensity. "We're here, Alina," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "We're getting you out of here." But as the crew approached the sphere, the chamber's energy surged, the glowing patterns flaring brighter. A voice echoed through the room, deep and resonant, bypassing their ears entirely. "You dare defy the Guardians, the anchor must remain. The truth must remain hidden." The crew exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on them. They had fought their way through traps and Guardians, but the Watcher's final defense was unlike anything they had faced before. The Stronghold itself seemed to be alive, its energy focused on protecting the sphere and the truth it contained. As the crew prepared to make their final move, one thing was clear: the fight wasn't over. They had come too far to turn back now, but the cost of their victory was still unknown. And as the chamber's energy surged around them, one question lingered in the air. Would they be able to free Alina, or would the Watcher's safeguards prove too powerful to overcome? The central chamber of the Watcher's stronghold pulsed with an otherworldly energy, the glowing geometric patterns on the walls shifting and twisting like living things. At the heart of the room, the shimmering containment sphere hovered, its surface rippling faintly as Alina's ethereal form flickered within. The crew stood in tense silence, their resolve unshaken despite the overwhelming presence of the stronghold itself. But before they could act, the air around them seemed to thicken, and a towering figure materialized from the shadows, a Watcher leader, its form radiating an aura of ancient power. Marcus stepped forward, his usual bravado replaced by a rare intensity. "We're not leaving without her," he said, his voice steady but laced with defiance. "You took her from us, and we're taking her back." The Watcher leader's voice echoed through the chamber, deep and resonant, bypassing their ears entirely. "You do not understand the cost of your actions. The anchor must remain. To free her is to unleash the truth, and with it, destruction." The words hung in the air, their weight pressing down on the crew like a physical force. Priya's analytical mind raced as she processed the implications. If we free Elena, we risk destabilizing the Anomalies completely. The primordial shadow could break free, and the universe would fall. Marcus clenched his fists, his frustration boiling over. So, what, we just leave her here? Let her suffer forever while you play cosmic jailers? That's not justice. That's cowardice. The Watcher leader's glowing patterns flared brighter, its tone cold and unyielding. Justice. You speak of justice as if it is a simple concept. We have sacrificed everything to contain the primordial shadow. We have bound ourselves to this prison, to this truth, to ensure the survival of the universe. And now you would undo it all for the sake of one life. Marcus's voice rose, his anger and desperation blending into a single, defiant declaration. One life. Alina gave everything to save the universe. She became the anchor, the thing holding this whole mess together. And you're telling me she's just supposed to stay here, trapped forever? No, we're not letting that happen. The Watcher leader's form shifted, its glowing patterns dimming slightly as if weighed down by the gravity of its next words. You do not comprehend the magnitude of what you are asking. The truth is not just dangerous, it is a force of chaos. To free her is to risk unraveling the very fabric of reality. Are you prepared to bear that burden? Priya stepped forward, her voice calm but urgent. We've already seen what happens when the anomalies destabilize. We've felt the primordial shadow's presence, its hunger, but we've also seen the cost of leaving Alina trapped here. There has to be another way, a way to free her without unleashing destruction. Kyan, ever the pragmatist, added, the anomalies are part of a system, a network. If we can stabilize the network without relying on the anchor, we might be able to free her without risking everything. The Watcher leader's response was immediate, its voice sharp and final. The system is failing. The anchors are the only thing keeping the anomalies stable. To remove one is to risk collapse. Marcus shook his head, his resolve unshaken. Then we'll find another anchor. We'll rebuild the system, but we're not leaving her here. Not again. The chamber fell silent, the tension palpable as the crew and the Watcher leader faced off. The stakes had never been higher. Freeing Elena could save her, but it could also doom the universe. Yet, as Marcus stared into the Watcher's glowing form, he knew one thing for certain. They had come too far to turn back now. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. And as the crew prepared to make their final move, one question lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. Would they be able to free Elena without unleashing the truth? Or would their actions bring about the very destruction they sought to prevent? The answer, whatever it was, would change everything. The air in the chamber grew heavier, the faint hum of the Stronghold's energy intensifying as the crew squared off against the Watcher leader. Marcus's fists were clenched, his determination unshaken, but before he could speak again, a strange sensation washed over him. His vision blurred, his thoughts scattering like leaves in a storm. And then, as if from a great distance, he heard a voice he hadn't heard in years. Marcus. It was Alina. Her voice was faint, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. It wasn't coming from the containment sphere. It was inside his mind. Her consciousness, still bound to the dark matter entity, had reached out to him, merging with his own. Marcus staggered, his hand flying to his temple as her presence filled his thoughts. The crew turned to him, their expressions a mix of confusion and alarm. Alina, Marcus whispered, his voice trembling. Is that you? Her response was immediate, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. It's me. I'm still here, Marcus. I've been here all along. The crew stared at him, their unease growing. Priya stepped forward, her analytical mind already piecing together what was happening. Alina's consciousness, it's connected to the dark matter entity. She's using it to communicate through you. Marcus nodded, his voice strained but resolute. She says there's a way to fix this, to stabilize the anomalies and free her, but it's not going to be easy. Elena's voice echoed in his mind, her tone calm but urgent. The anomalies are fragments of the primordial shadow's power, scattered and unstable. To restore balance, they must be merged into a single, stable entity. But to do that, someone must act as the catalyst, a living conduit to channel their energy and bind them together. Priya's eyes widened as she processed the implications. A single, stable entity. It would eliminate the need for the anchors, but the process would be incredibly dangerous. The energy required to merge the anomalies could destroy whoever attempts it. Marcus straightened, his resolve hardening. Then I'll do it. If it means freeing Elena and saving the universe, I'll take the risk. Elena's voice cut through his thoughts, sharp and insistent. No, Marcus, it has to be me. My consciousness is already bound to the dark matter entity. I'm the only one who can withstand the energy and guide the anomalies into alignment. But I'll need your help, all of you. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on them. The idea of merging the anomalies was a gamble, a high-stakes play that could either save everything or doom it all. But as Elena's voice continued to echo in Marcus's mind, one thing became clear. This was their only chance. Priya's voice broke the silence, her tone firm but tinged with emotion. If we're going to do this, we'll need to act fast. The anomalies are destabilizing faster than we anticipated. If we don't stabilize them soon, the primordial shadow will break free. Kyan stepped forward, his analytical mind already turning over the possibilities. We'll need to create a resonance field, a way to amplify Elena's connection to the anomalies and guide their energy into alignment. But it's going to take everything we've got. Zara nodded, her sharp instincts kicking in. Then let's get to work. We've got a universe to save. As the crew prepared to carry out their final mission, one question lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. Would they be able to merge the anomalies and restore balance? Or would their actions unleash the very chaos they sought to prevent? The answer, whatever it was, would change everything. And as the Stronghold's energy surged around them, one thing was clear. They were willing to risk it all to bring Elena home. The Aether hurtled through the void, its engines roaring as the crew raced against the clock. The anomalies were scattered across the galaxy, their energy signatures growing more erratic with each passing moment. The primordial shadow, once contained within the network, was beginning to break free, its malevolent presence manifesting in ways that defied comprehension. The crew could feel it, a faint, oppressive weight in the air, a sense of dread that grew stronger the closer they got to each anomaly. Priya's voice cut through the tension, sharp and urgent. We've got 3 anomalies left to stabilize, but the primordial shadow's influence is spreading faster than we anticipated. If we don't act now, it's going to break free before we can complete the merge. Marcus gripped the controls, his usual sarcasm replaced by a rare intensity. Then we'll have to move faster. Zara, plot the quickest route to the next anomaly. Kyan, keep an eye on the energy readings. We can't afford any surprises. The next anomaly loomed ahead, its swirling mass of dark matter, crackling with faint bursts of energy. But as the Aether approached, the crew noticed something strange. The anomaly's energy signature was fluctuating wildly, its pulses growing more erratic with each passing moment. And then, as they drew closer, they saw it, a faint, shadowy presence emerging from the anomaly's core, its form shifting and twisting like smoke. What the hell is that? Marcus muttered, his voice tight with unease. Priya's hands flew over the console, her analytical mind working overtime. It's the primordial shadow. It's beginning to manifest. If we don't stabilize the anomaly now, it's going to break free. The crew sprang into action, their movements precise but tinged with urgency. Kyan adjusted the ship's sensors, focusing on the anomaly's energy patterns. We'll need to create a resonance field to stabilize it, but if the primordial shadow interferes, it could disrupt the process. Zara's sharp instincts kicked in as she maneuvered the ship into position. Then we'll have to do it fast. Marcus, get ready to activate the field on my mark. As the Aether approached the anomaly, the shadowy presence grew larger, its form becoming more distinct. It was a swirling mass of darkness, its edges shifting and undulating like a living thing. The crew could feel its presence, a cold, oppressive weight that seemed to press down on them from all sides. Now, Zara shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Marcus activated the resonance field, a burst of energy surging from the ship and enveloping the anomaly. The shadowy presence recoiled, its form flickering faintly as the field took hold. But it wasn't enough. The anomaly's energy signature continued to fluctuate, its pulses growing more erratic with each passing moment. It's not working. Priya shouted, her voice tinged with panic. The primordial shadow's influence is too strong. We need more power. Marcus gritted his teeth, his hands flying over the controls. Then we'll give it more power. Kyan, reroute all non-essential systems to the resonance field. We're not losing this one. The ship's engines roared as the resonance field intensified, its energy surging through the anomaly. The shadowy presence let out a deafening roar, its form flickering and twisting as it fought against the field. But the crew held firm, their determination unshaken. They had come too far to let the primordial shadow win. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the anomaly's energy signature stabilized, its pulses calming into a steady rhythm. The shadowy presence let out one final, desperate roar before dissipating into the void. The crew exhaled collectively, their relief palpable, but the fight wasn't over. The primordial shadow was still out there, its influence spreading faster than ever, and as the Aether adjusted its course for the next anomaly, one thing was clear: they were running out of time. The universe was counting on them, and they couldn't afford to fail. The stakes had never been higher, and the crew knew that every second counted. They were fighting not just for Alina, but for the survival of everything. And as the ship disappeared into the void, one question lingered in the air. Would they be able to stabilize the remaining anomalies before it was too late? The Aether hovered at the edge of the final anomaly, its engines humming faintly as the crew prepared for the last, desperate act. The anomaly loomed ahead, its swirling mass of dark matter crackling with energy, the faint, shadowy presence of the primordial shadow flickering at its core. The stakes had never been higher. The universe was on the brink, and the crew knew that this was their only chance to save it. Elena's voice echoed in Marcus's mind, steady but tinged with urgency. This is it. We have to merge the anomalies now. If we wait any longer, the primordial shadow will break free. Marcus nodded, his usual sarcasm replaced by a rare intensity. Then let's do it. We've come this far. We're not backing down now. Priya's voice cut through the tension, sharp and urgent. The resonance field is ready. But merging the anomalies is going to take everything we've got. The energy required could destroy the ship and us. Elena's voice was calm, but resolute. Then we'll give it everything. The universe is counting on us. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on them. They had fought their way through countless obstacles, faced the Watchers, and confronted the primordial shadow itself. But this was different. This was the end game. Marcus stepped forward, his resolve hardening. Then let's get to work. Priya, keep the resonance field stable. Kyan, monitor the energy readings. Zara, get us as close as you can. And Alina, we're with you. The Aether surged forward, its thrusters roaring as it approached the anomaly. The resonance field flared to life, its energy enveloping the swirling mass of dark matter. The shadowy presence at the core recoiled, its form flickering faintly as the field took hold. But it wasn't enough. The anomaly's energy signature continued to fluctuate, its pulses growing more erratic with each passing moment. We need more power, Priya shouted, her voice tinged with panic. The primordial shadow's influence is too strong. Marcus gritted his teeth, his hands flying over the controls. Then we'll give it more power. Reroute all non-essential systems to the resonance field. We're not losing this one. The ship's engines roared as the resonance field intensified, its energy surging through the anomaly. The shadowy presence let out a deafening roar, its form flickering and twisting as it fought against the field. But the crew held firm, their determination unshaken. They had come too far to let the primordial shadow win. Alina's voice echoed in Marcus's mind, calm but urgent. It's time. We have to merge the anomalies. But it's going to take everything we've got. Are you ready? Marcus nodded, his resolve hardening. Do it. The Aether's system surged as Alina and Marcus merged the anomalies, their energy flowing together in a swirling vortex of light and shadow. The ship's hull groaned under the strain, its systems flickering as the energy surged through it. The crew clung to their stations, their senses overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of what was happening. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the anomalies merged, their energy signatures stabilizing into a single, steady rhythm. The shadowy presence let out one final, desperate roar before dissipating into the void. The crew exhaled collectively, their relief palpable, but the victory came at a cost. The energy required to merge the anomalies had been too much for the Aether, and for Alina and Marcus. Their forms flickered faintly, their consciousness fading as the energy surged through them. Priya's voice broke the silence, her tone heavy with sorrow. They are gone. They gave everything to save us. The crew fell silent, the weight of their loss pressing heavily on them. They had saved the universe, but at a cost that no one could have anticipated. Alina and Marcus were gone, their sacrifice ensuring that the primordial shadow remained imprisoned, the forbidden truth hidden once more. As the Aether drifted in the void, its systems slowly coming back online, one question lingered in the air, unspoken but undeniable. What would the universe look like without the truth? The answer, whatever it was, would haunt them forever. And as the ship disappeared into the void, one thing was clear. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning.